Away we go on a Monday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin on this Modelo Monday. So much to react to. 68 entered, 16 remain. On the women's side, still 2 more Big 12 teams to go tonight before the Sweet 16 is completely set. What's up, James? How are you?
Good to see you again.
You too?
The band is back together.
What does that mean?
The 3 of us are in studio.
Oh.
It has been a minute.
Yes.
I'm back in my normal seat, which just feels right.
Yeah.
Feels like I'm back at home over here to your left.
Yes.
You're to my right.
Yes.
We're all willy-nilly at the Big 12 tournament. So here we are back in our normal spots. It feels good, unlike my bracket, which I was off to a tremendous start in our Big 12 Radio Bracket Challenge.
Yeah, I noticed I stopped getting by-the-minute updates.
Yeah, those went by the wayside. There were a couple of upsets yesterday and a couple of upsets that I had that didn't happen. So I've plummeted to like 17th out of the 70 that have entered, which is super disappointing because I was really excited about that 15-minute segment that is dedicated to our winner so I could just highlight my greatness during one segment of the show.
But that's not going to happen now?
It's not going to happen.
What place are you in now?
17th.
Can I just mention a few things? Number one, you said 70 entries. There's actually a very specific number of entries we got.
We have 70 people in the group.
7
7
entries.
So we have 3 that didn't hit that submit button, which
Yeah.
I've been bitten by a time or two.
But I was pretty happy that we ended up with 67.
Yeah, that's
I couldn't be
very
happier,
fitting.
more excited to tell my kids. They were just jazzed and amped up about it.
Well, and on an emotional level, the 3 of us are like middle schoolers, so it pretty much checks all the boxes.
Looks like Fugue's picks is in first place.
Who has Iowa State winning the championship?
Scorekeepers Anonymous has Duke is in second place, and then P. Watley's picks Arizona in third place.
P. Watley is my wife's cousin.
Oh,
who knows nothing, as far as I know, knows nothing about basketball, but she's having a killer bracket. I'm Team Peyton. Let's go, Peyton. Arizona, all the way. Would love to see her join us on the show to talk about her deep dive bracket breakdown, because I'm sure a lot of thought went into it.
I'm cramp-free in March, which is 39th right now. So I'm in rough shape.
So you're cramping up. You've sat a couple out. You've had to manage your minutes, but there's still a chance for a surge from you.
I'm still alive in the Survivor pool. It's the first time I've made it to the second weekend in Survivor pool during the March Madness tournament.
Okay.
Jazzed about that, except that I've got a really weird situation brewing for the Sweet 16, which we'll get into. But basically, I've got to pick either Houston or Illinois on the first day of the Sweet 16.
To lose.
Well, I've got for my Survivor pool, I've got to pick either Houston or Illinois.
But
because the only other game on Friday night is Purdue and whoever Purdue plays, Texas, and I already picked Purdue yesterday. So.
But are you picking a team to win each round, or are you guys doing it the other way? Because I've seen both, where you pick a loser each round.
No, you pick the winner every day.
Got it.
So I had to pick 4 winners over the weekend.
Okay.
So not each round, it's each day.
Gotcha.
So yeah. All right, should we react to what we saw this weekend? Put a minute on the clock and talk about all these games.
Yeah, I like that. I like that format.
I mean, we can skip through some of these first round wins, I think, and maybe just kind of make our way to the decisive games.
Yeah, you tell me a game. Let's do it.
All right, well, let's start with the teams that didn't make it. So 8 entered for the Big 12. 6 survived the opening round. 2 lost in the opening round. And now 3 are left here in the Sweet 16. By the way, Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo. Cheers to you, all you Modelo full-time fans. Rule number 26, buzzer beaters require silence, yelling, pacing, and a Modelo recovery. Don't I know that?
Yeah.
Don't I know that?
I don't even want to know how many Modelos you had to have to recover from that one.
Lots of screaming, lots of pacing.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Actually, it was a lot quieter than you'd expect. Yeah. A lot more reserved.
Okay.
Sort of at peace with the fate of my Jayhawks.
Which is kind of the reaction that Bill Self had.
Yeah.
I mean, he kicked the scores table, and then it was he just looked stunned, kind of like this is just a snapshot of the entire season.
Yeah, we'll get to that game coming up. But let's talk about the teams that were eliminated first in the first round. Let's start with the UCLA and UCF. UCF stormed back from 14 points down to pull within 3 points with 6 seconds left, but lost 75-71 to UCLA before UCLA bowed out yesterday. Donovan Dent had 5 steals before halftime for UCLA. Eric Daly had 20 points. Xavier Booker had 15 at 8. Jordan Burks at 6 threes, 22 points, including one that made it 72-69 with 10 seconds left. He almost single-handedly carried UCF back.
Yeah, UCF trailed most of the game. It felt like UCLA was in control, but those late last half-minute threes that UCF had made it a little bit interesting down the stretch. Ultimately, UCLA had to ice it at the foul line. I thought UCF, against a UCLA team that was one of the hottest teams coming into the field in the entire country. They were top 10 in all the metrics in Torvik rating and KenPom over the last month of the season. I thought they battled and really represented their seed line in a positive way. They definitely belonged on the floor, and they could be a real problem in this league next year.
All right, Texas, BYU. Texas is one of the lowest seeded teams left in the Sweet 16. They knock off BYU in the first round after winning their first 4 matchup. There have been 64 games in which a number 11 seed has defeated a number 6, a rate of 37.8% since the NCAA tournament expanded in 1985. So it's basically become a coin flip to a degree. And by the way, dating back to 2014, number 11 seeds are 23-21 in this matchup.
Wow.
So the more modern era, 11 seeds are beating 6 seeds more often than they're not. But look, I thought impressive by Texas. They've looked really good in this tournament. And BYU, this is sort of what we saw for them at the end of the year. It was nobody other than A.J. DeBonsa. He was phenomenal in this one. I don't know if he's going to be the number 1 pick, but he certainly made it look like he could be. Impressive win for Texas. Tough loss for BYU, but this is kind of who they were. Yeah,
DeBonsa goes out with a quiet 35 points and 10 rebounds. And watching that game, it felt like the winner of that matchup would beat Gonzaga. I just wasn't very confident that Gonzaga would get out of the first weekend, and it turns out that was the case with Texas moving on to the Sweet 16. And I think that 11-6 stat is very much weighed in that lately in this modern era, since the play-in game format, a lot of those 11 seeds are from power conferences. NC State was an 11 seed when they made their Final Four run. We're seeing it right now with Texas, who looked really good, and getting to the foul line I knew would be a challenge for BYU. And then you can't shoot 18% from 3 and expect to win a tournament game.
Yeah. All right, so Texas Tech knocks off Akron in the first round before getting doused by Alabama last night. Nice win by Tech to beat Akron. Again, without JT Toppin, we weren't sure, and that was a very, very attractive pick for many to pick the upset there, but Texas Tech survives before being kind of blitzed by Alabama. This thing was never really close. It was, you look up, it's 20-7, and even though there was 9 minutes into this game, you felt like it was over at that point. It was.
Very much so. And this, I felt like, would come down to just who shot the ball better on the perimeter with the style of play that both teams bring to the table. And I almost wonder if Alabama's better without Holloway. Was he an internal locker room cancer? Because they are at their best. They drilled 19 three-pointers in that game, the third most in March Madness history. They never looked back from the get-go. Texas Tech was down 24 at halftime. Only shot 2 for 13 from 3 in the first half. I think Texas Tech did without Toppin. They lost their legs down the stretch. So I'm glad they didn't get upset on that 5-12 game, but then Alabama looks like a machine.
All right, TCU knocked off Ohio State in the first round. We talked about that game on Friday, and then lost to Duke in the second round. And look, TCU hung tough for 26 minutes with Duke. TCU held them scoreless for a 9-minute stretch spanning both halves. The issue with that one is they did not do enough to score and stretch a lead at that point in time. They tied the game at 44 with under 14 minutes remaining, and then Cameron Boozer went absolutely bananas. Patrick Ngagba came off the bench and became a hugely impactful player. Duke shot 61.5% after halftime and pulled away for the 81-58 win. Biggest issue was TCU did not create a cushion when they held Duke scoreless for 9 minutes. TCU missed 15 of 17 shots after a Jaden Peer layup tied it at 44 with 13:56 left.
Yeah, this game was close for a while. Like you said, it was 36-34 after Tanner Toolson hit a 3 with 1:12 to go before halftime. They held Cameron Boozer to just 1 field goal attempt in the first 20 minutes. But I felt like this game was, number one, it was very poorly officiated. Like,
yes.
Jamie Dixon gets a tee for a call that, by the way, he was right about.
They missed a goaltending call. Dixon lost his mind, rightfully so. He gets teed up. That's a 4-point possession there.
Yep, and a huge turning point in this game. And we'll get into this later. I feel like some of these tournament games have been very poorly officiated, which I can't remember a tournament where that's been highlighted in any way. For Jamie Dixon to get a tee, something's maybe just a little bit off. But I thought TCU battled. They're the only team in the field that had to play all 4 1 seeds this season. So you take away those 4 games, and they were like 25-9 and had a very, very nice year. I think what they did this season's very underrated.
Yeah, well said. Agreed. All right, are we finally to Kansas now of teams that didn't make it to the Sweet 16? Kansas knocked off Cal Baptist in a game that they almost blew down the stretch. And then, I don't even know what you say about the St. John's loss. Kansas loses 67-65 to St. John's. We're going to need lots of time to talk about this game. But, I mean, look, I'm shocked. They clawed their way back after being kind of playing hopelessly for about 35 minutes in this one. Tied the game at 65 with 2 Darren Peterson free throws, and then made a really weird decision at the end of this game to foul a bunch in order to get them to 6 fouls before Elmarco Jackson just kind of allowed Dylan Darling to go right to the rim and score at the buzzer. A layup at the buzzer allowed St. John's to advance to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1999. Kansas has now missed the Sweet 16 out of 4 of the last 5 seasons. This was a brutal finish to a game that surprisingly came down to the wire.
Incredible coaching matchup. You've got the 73-year-old Rick Pitino, 63-year-old Bill Self, and St. John's was very underseeded, number one. They had won 21 of their last 22 games to finish the regular season. That team was really hot. And I felt like the Zuby Ejiofor subplot was really the story here. That dude is a beast. And we've talked about Bill Self and his evaluation of talent. Remember, he ran off Ejiofor to bring in Hunter Dickinson and make him the centerpiece of their offense for 2 seasons, and it didn't go well. Ejiofor is the centerpiece of that St. John's offense and the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. He's just an absolute animal on both ends, and even though he didn't score the game winner, he's the reason why St. John's was even in that position.
Yeah, plenty more to come on this game for sure. All right, let's get to the 3 teams that did advance. Let's start with Houston. The Cougs, not much in terms of tough games for the first 2 games of this tournament, as they knocked off Texas A&M 88-57 to punch their ticket down to Houston. That one was just never really close. It was 46-28 at halftime, and then Houston went ahead and outscored A&M 42-29 in the second half of this one.
I mean, you could make the case that Houston and Iowa State in their first 2 games in the tournament have maybe played better than Arizona, but Arizona's still playing really, really good basketball. And my point in saying that is I think the Big 12's in a strong position to get multiple teams into the Final Four because Houston now has Florida out of the bracket. I was really surprised the way Houston just dominated Texas A&M because I thought stylistically that could cause some problems for Houston. I thought A&M could maybe speed them up. Houston was having none of it. They just absolutely manhandled that team. They held Texas A&M without a made field goal for almost 7 minutes in the second half. A&M missed 12 straight shots, and Houston had 19 offensive rebounds in that game. They turned every missed shot into an extra possession and a 21-4 extended run. I mean, just dominance all across the board in so many different categories.
All right, let's talk Arizona now. Arizona punches their ticket to San Jose in the West region after they knocked off Utah State last night in a game that surprisingly was close. But Jaden Bradley was phenomenal in this one, and so is Braden Burries, who buried a 3 that basically won the game for Arizona and clinched it.
Yeah, Utah State's always pesky in the NCAA tournament, and a lot of times they're somewhere between an 11 and 13 seed, and they always cause a lot of problems for whoever they play. Utah State was a team that I felt like just didn't have the depth to hang with Arizona, but still played about as well as they could have played. But this was Arizona just kind of flexing their muscles. That three-pointer from Braden Burries early in the second half, I really felt like set the tone for the rest of the way. Jaden Bradley didn't shoot the ball well in the first half. Started the game 1 for 9, but Arizona just continued to grind, and they move on.
All right, and lastly, Iowa State. They knock off Tennessee State but lose Joshua Jefferson. Jefferson with a high ankle sprain did not play against Kentucky, and it looked like it might cost them early on in this game. Kentucky just got off to a blazing start, led 20-9, but then they would go on to make just 5 baskets in the next 20 minutes of game action. Iowa State turned Kentucky over 12 times the first half, and it felt like Heisey drilled a 3 at the buzzer at the first half to put Iowa State up, and after that they were off to the races. Tamin Lipsey was not ready for the season to be over. Even with the injury to Joshua Jefferson, a lot of people did not expect Iowa State to beat Kentucky, and Tamin Lipsey absolutely took over in the second half. Iowa State shot 63% from the field, outscored Kentucky 51-33 in the second half. It was an unbelievable turnaround for an Iowa State team that looked dead to rights early on in this game, and again, Lipsey was not ready for the season to be over.
And I was really worried about this matchup going in because Kentucky was coming off that emotional high with that banked-in half-court heave that got their first-round game into overtime. And Kentucky led 30-23 with about 2 minutes to go in the first half. They still led by 7, but then Iowa State, they really took advantage of some Kentucky turnovers. Kentucky had 3 turnovers in the final 90 seconds of that first half, and Iowa State closed the half on an 8-1 run. And then you hit it with Lipsey, back-to-back threes to start the second half, and Iowa State was off to the races. That is an Iowa State team that has way more depth than they had a season ago. And so I think they can withstand that Joshua Jefferson injury to kind of spark them from a motivational aspect. Like, they just looked like a team and a fifth-year point guard that was refusing to lose in that round. So I like the way that they played in that matchup.
Yeah, well said. Lipsey with, 26 and 10? Not bad.
No.
Not bad in a decisive game.
Yeah, 17 of his 26 points were after halftime in the second half. Like, he was doing things that he couldn't do 2 years ago or even last season. I mean, he's burying threes. He's step-back pop. Like, Tamin Lipsey was in his bag.
Yeah, and we'll see what the future holds for Joshua Jefferson. Obviously, tougher to win these games without Jefferson. But nice win for Iowa State to get them to the Sweet 16. 3 teams from the Big 12 out of the second weekend. No surprises, though, James. These are the 3 best teams in the Big 12. We said it at the end of the Big 12 tournament. These 3 teams playing as good a ball as anybody. Now, the difference is that Iowa State's without Joshua Jefferson now. But Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, no surprises. Those are the 3 teams left standing.
Yeah, totally agree. And those 3 teams have looked dominant in the NCAA tournament. That is maybe the biggest storyline for me, is just how impressive everybody was across the board among those 3 in their second round win. Like, there weren't a ton of blowouts in the second round. A lot of the games were close, and Iowa State and Houston looked like teams that could be Final Four teams. And you're right, we were worried about BYU with their injuries. Texas Tech, when we saw Alabama, we thought that could be a tough matchup if they get past a dangerous Akron team. And then the rocky road that Kansas has, when we saw their bracket, and probably the toughest region, I would say, when you look at how dominant Duke and St. John's have been. So I think the Big 12 so far, like, there hasn't been anybody that's been a major disappointment, which, that's I know everybody looks at leagues and how many teams you get into the Sweet 16, but I also look at teams that just fell flat on their face, and that wasn't the Big 12. The Big 12, I thought, very much held its own through the first weekend, and now we've got 3 teams that, frankly, any of the 3 could maybe win the entire thing. But I think the first step is just getting more than 1 to the Final Four.
Yeah, 4 from the SEC are into the Sweet 16, including 11-seeded Texas. 6 out of the Big 10 have made the Sweet 16, including 9-seed Iowa, who knocked off the defending champion Florida Gators last night.
Which was so awesome.
Nebraska also winning not only their first but second NCAA tournament game of all time, and it was dramatic how they almost lost at the end. 2 from the Big East, St. John's and UConn, both making it out of the Big East, and then 1 from the Atlantic Coast Conference. Ouch. Duke, the only team left in the field out of the ACC in the Sweet 16.
Like, that league is Duke and everybody else. You can see why Duke was beating teams by 30 and 40 points. I mean, the ACC is down outside of that that perennial power. North Carolina is probably going to be going through a coaching change. You look at Louisville, and they're just not quite there yet, and they had their stuff this season with the Brown kid, and the league just doesn't have the depth that it used to have. With Syracuse going through their struggles, I think Florida State's going to be good. I like their coach, but this year it's pretty clear who the fourth power conference team was. Or conference, I should say.
On the women's side, TCU's into the Sweet 16 as they win their regional. West Virginia against Kentucky tonight to try to win their regional, and then Oklahoma State will try to do the impossible, knock off UCLA. Both of those games tonight. We'll see if 3 from the Big 12 can get into the Sweet 16 on the women's side. All right, so much to get to on today's show in reaction to the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. How did we get here? Ultimate breakdown of the Big 12, including did we just see the last game for Bill Self at Kansas? That's all coming up next. It's Big 12 Today, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. We are presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
The focus needs to be on the players and on their great play on the court, so I support the Big 12's decision 100%.
Underway, and it is Arizona with the first possession. This Iowa State team 27-6 on the season, 12-6 in league play. They finished in a 3-way tie for third, but because the tiebreakers fell down to the 5 seed.
Is what makes him so incredibly valuable, and that's one of the biggest reasons he's Big 12 Player of the Year.
2-man game, Lipsy and Buchanan. Rebound, Lipsy. Momcilovic for 3. They are extremely talented, and this guy is one of the reasons why. Tobe Awaka came up with a rebound, couldn't finish, got it back again. And Del Orso knocks down his second 3 of the night. He averages almost 3 assists per game. Deflected by Del Orso. He's got it back. A little Euro step, and it rolls in for him. What a sequence, Jay, here in the closing seconds of the first half.
2 huge threes in transition by Momcilovic.
He's going to try one more. Got it! Oh!
Tobe Awaka down on the baseline with Krivas. They can duck in hard.
Bradley can't shake Torrey. Forces it up and hits. Finds Buchanan. 10 to shoot. Buchanan looking for somebody to give it to. Finds Lipsy. 5 to shoot. Tie game!
Remember, it's not just the first shot. It's the offensive rebound.
Bradley trying to do it himself. He does! He hit it!
Big 12 Radio. We are Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. 3 teams left out of the Big 12 in the Sweet 16. Again, 6 from the Big 10, 4 from the SEC, 3 from the Big 12, 2 from the Big East, 1 from the ACC. You'll notice no mid-majors. They're all eliminated. The lowest seeded teams left, 9 Iowa out of the Big 10 with a huge win, and 11 seeded Texas also punching their ticket to the Sweet 16.
May I?
You may.
Question for you.
Yeah.
So 3 of the 16 are from the Big 12. A month ago, let's go mid-February. If we had sat here and said we'll have 3 teams in the Sweet 16, would you have taken the over or the under? Like, should we be disappointed that there aren't more? Or coming into the tournament, is this about where we expected to be?
Well, I would say, so if we're rewinding to February, it would be disappointing. I would say, but based on where we were when the Big 12 tournament happened.
Like, context is everything.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably right where we expected. You know, the JT Toppin injury for Texas Tech was going to make it really tough. Would have been nice for them to be more competitive. Kansas was an absolute mess kind of all year. They had stretches where they played really well, but ultimately this outcome was exactly, you know, what we expected, what I expected. Maybe not the total way it went, but yeah, it was sort of emblematic of how the season went.
It's a really long season.
Yeah.
I mean, teams start practicing early October. Basketball games now tip off like November 1st or 2nd. It's almost a 6-month season. We are sitting here March 23rd, and when you talk about teams and when they're at their best, you usually circle the month of February, right? Well, we're 53 days past February 1st. I mean, it is a long season. And so what these teams were back in February now look even more different than they did back then. Like, where is BYU if Richie Saunders doesn't go down with a torn ACL? Where is Texas Tech if JT Toppin doesn't go down with a torn ACL? What if Darren Peterson plays a little bit more, maybe starting in January versus February? Is Kansas different offensively? Did Melvin Council lose his legs and get tired down the stretch? It is a long season, and so the deepest teams are the teams that make it the furthest. And that's something that maybe in the past I've overlooked a little bit, but it's very clear why Houston, who's now playing McCarty more and Mercy Miller more, why they are who they are now. And Arizona with their depth, and even Iowa State, who goes about 9 or 10 deep now that Plata's playing better and Bateman's playing better and Heisey off the bench. It's why they can withstand a Joshua Jefferson injury. Depth is so much critical, more so now than ever, because the season is just longer and longer, and it's more taxing in conference play than it's ever been with all these schools top-loading college basketball. The games are tougher. There's more NBA talent on the floor now than there were a decade ago or 20 years ago. So I just think that the whole college basketball landscape has shifted. And so, yeah, I'm with you. If we look at this mid-February, we're talking about Texas Tech and Kansas both being top 4 seeds, which means they would be expected to be in this spot. But context is everything. And so I'm with you in that it's not a disappointment. I think the men separated from the boys in the Big 12 in terms of who those best 3 teams are, and now any of them could win the whole thing.
And look, I would say it's disappointing to a degree, but it's not surprising given where we were at the end of the Big 12 tournament.
Exactly.
I'm not surprised these 3 teams are the ones that are left standing. It's disappointing given how good the Big 12 can be, but injuries have derailed a lot of that. Let's look at Kansas, because there's a ton to talk about when it comes to the Jayhawks. Kansas falls 67-65 to St. John's. It's now the 4th time in the last 5 years Kansas has not made it out of the first weekend. They made it out of the first round, surviving late against Cal Baptist. They went up 24 in that game and then nearly blew it at the end with an inefficient offense. The St. John's game was a whole different ball of wax, though, as I'm not sure how they managed to keep this game close for 35 minutes. But at one point, St. John's went up 16, only for Kansas to at one point tie the game 65-65, managing somehow to muster some offense. This has just been a brutal offense all year, and it looked like that in the NCAA tournament. But Kansas had only 2 team fouls with 10 seconds to go.
Yeah.
And I thought the approach of, basically fouling 4 times in order to give those fouls, which left St. John's with 3.9 seconds. They put Elmarco Jackson back in the game for Cole Rosario, who Rosario had kind of gone MIA for the last few months of the season, but he showed up in a big way in the tournament. He gave them a huge spark in this game, hit a three when nobody else. He was the first player not named Darren Peterson to hit a three for Kansas in this tournament.
And he did the same thing in the Big 12 tournament, lost to Houston. He gets in with about 10 minutes to go in the second half. And my first thought is, why isn't this kid on the floor more? Like, number one, he's very physically built. Okay, he doesn't look like a 17 or 18-year-old freshman. He has some weight on him. I was watching him defensively, and I didn't see him as a liability. And he's KU's best pure shooter. I mean, he's a guy that could have been playing more minutes.
Well, he started the year as a starter.
Like, what happened? Why wasn't he on the floor more than Jackson or McDowell in some of these key games?
Trey White.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Trey White, Melvin Council, and Bryson Tiller at times this year were really good and helped Kansas win some games. I mean, the NC State game stands out. They have some impressive wins this year, but those three guys no-show to the tournament.
Yep.
I mean, Council played a little bit down the stretch well. Trey White was borderline unplayable. I mean, my goodness, was he bad. And Bryson Tiller as well. Just two guys that completely disappeared in the biggest moments of the season.
Which is very uncharacteristic of Bill Self teams. Bill Self's players, historically, have gotten better as the season has progressed. Where by the time you get in the NCAA tournament, they're at their best. It's like, who's going to slow these guys down? I can remember years where Devontae Graham and Jalen Wilson and Ochai Agbaji, that 22 national championship team, by the end of the year, Agbaji was playing like a top 5 NBA draft pick. And these last 4 or 5 seasons, it just hasn't gone that way, where you haven't seen the growth. Kevin McCullough a couple of years ago starts regressing the final few games of the season. Who is the kid? Remy Martin is the one I'm thinking of in 2022, who had been terrible all year, gets healthy. Bill Self lights a fire under him, and he's, the Big 12 tournament MVP, and then goes on and balls out in the NCAA tournament and is a huge part of their run. Malik Newman had a similar story. The last 4 or 5 years, 4 straight years without a Sweet 16. KU hasn't made it out of the first weekend in 4 of the last 5. It's the first time that's happened since 1981 to 1985. This is just a period of Kansas basketball that we haven't seen in our lifetime.
And look, there's definitely some question marks about Bill Self and some of the decision-making. We talked about rotations and why Cole Rosario was buried in the bench deep into the season, and some of these other guys that maybe could have developed over the course of the season. But I'd say the worst was the ending of this game, where, number one, I'm not sure you had a plan. We talk about this in football all the time, but you have to have a plan for end-of-game situations. And it felt like Kansas had no idea what the plan was. You know, he's saying after the game that he thought they should have waited a little bit more time before they intentionally fouled. I'll never understand the idea of intentionally fouling in a situation like that. Like, maybe you want to intentionally foul a few times, but to me, if you are now up against it in terms of the bonus, you fouled 4 straight to now get them to the bonus with 3.9 seconds left. Like, Elmarco Jackson may be the Kansas's best on-ball defender, but now you take away some of his ability to be physical because he's worried about causing a foul to get the guy to the line. But, I mean, just a brutal ending for a game that it's like, why'd you spend 35 minutes clawing your way back when you're down 14 points just to lose like that?
Totally agree. Because it felt like KU had all the momentum, where initially when KU fouled the first 2 times in the backcourt, I thought, okay, this is a brilliant strategy because it doesn't allow St. John's to get a running start.
Yeah.
It shaves 4 or 5 seconds collectively off the clock, and they're still inbounding the basketball in backcourt. But then KU committed 2 more fouls in the front court or around the midcourt line. So St. John's is inbounding the basketball basically at half court. And with 3.9 seconds, that's 3 dribbles. And St. John's did exactly what you want to do in that situation. You get the ball to your quickest guy. You give him 3 dribbles. He gets deep into the lane. He either dumps it off or he lays it in. And Zuby Ejiofor came way out on the perimeter and drug Flory Badunga away from the basket, which that to me was a mental error from Flory, because Ejiofor is not a threat to launch a 30-foot 3. You don't need to be that far.
Well, and
out
if he
on
is,
the
then
perimeter.
if he is, then
Take
fine.
your chances.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
If he makes it, he makes it, and you go down swinging. Like, I would have camped him out in the lane, put him at the rim. It was just, like you said, kind of a mental collapse by Kansas in the final 4 or 5, 6 seconds.
And I think big picture, Kansas was just excruciating on offense, like a really elite defense, but just a putrid offense. This has not been a high volume, high percentage 3-point shooting offense under Bill Self in recent history. They've finished basically since the 2018 season when they were elite at 3-point shooting. James, they finished in the hundreds every year, other than 22 when they were 57th. But in the hundreds in 3-point shooting, they're going to be 60th in Ken Palm offense. This is the worst finish in Ken Palm offense for Bill Self ever. And they've been in the 50s really since winning the title in 2022. So the question now comes is this the end for Bill Self? Here's what he said at the podium when asked about it.
Well, I haven't really gone through much on the court. I've gone through some stuff off the court. So I'll get back and get with family and visit and see what's going on. I love what I do. I need to be able to do it where I'm feeling good and healthy to do it, fairly well. So I'll get back home and it'll all be discussed. No, I haven't decided. I'll get back and visit with family, and I've had some obviously some issues off the court health-wise, and that'll be discussed. But I love what I do. I want to feel good while I'm doing it, though. So we'll get back and we'll discuss that when we get back.
All right, so there you go. There's a repeat of the same clip, but Self needs to feel good. He's missed time this year due to the heart issues that he's had. Here's his follow-up on looking at his future, his coaching future in 2-year increments.
I'm feeling. I feel as good as I felt in a long time. So and I'm not making any statements whatsoever. But every year, I think it used to be you work when you get to be done as long as I've done it. I look at it in 5-year increments. Now I'm probably looking at it more in 2-year increments, so to speak. So I've tried to focus on this season and trying to get us to a second weekend, which we failed at. So I'll go back now and break it down and see where that leads.
What do you think?
Well, if it's 2-year increments, that means he would be back one more season, because he told us at Big 12 Media Days that he strongly considered retiring this past July when he had the second of 2 stints inserted in 2025. So I don't know that that's necessarily the case that it is 2-year increments. I think it could be an annual thing. And the other part is, he just seems like a guy that he has more going on off the floor than he ever has before. He's got grandkids now. His son Tyler graduated a few years ago and has a child. He loves to golf. There are other things outside of basketball that he really enjoys and loves to do. What else is there left for Bill Self to do? And I think I would probably be more surprised if he comes back than if he doesn't, because a lot of coaches are retiring in this new modern era because they don't want to deal with NIL and transfer portal stuff, and they don't want to have to completely rebuild a roster every year. That's just not the way Bill Self built his Kansas teams. So when I hear those clips, it sounds to me like a guy that's probably leaning, hey, it's time. But we'll see, and the timing will be interesting because Kansas is a program that you probably can retire in May or June or even July, and they can go hire a new coach who's going to be a guy that has success right away. But a lot of these programs, there's 29 openings in college basketball right now. A lot of these programs, it's a race to the finish line to get your next guy during this NCAA tournament as soon as teams are eliminated.
What do you think Kansas fans should want?
Man, that's a good question. Probably a fresh start. When you win national championships, you've got a coach who, remember, he's missed games each of the last 3 seasons because of off-the-floor health-related incidents. He's missing actual games, which tells me that, hey, this is a serious thing. His health is not 100%.
Yeah. No, look, I think Bill Self's a Hall of Fame coach. He's won 2 national championships. He's been to 4 Final Fours. You wonder if the fatigue of NIL and what Kansas has been dealing with this season will be too much for him to want to come back. And the question then becomes, all right, who do you hire, and what are the chances that coach is going to be any better than Bill Self? Maybe they are right now, but, I mean, you're talking about replacing a legend, so how should Kansas fans feel? I'm sure a lot of Kansas fans want Bill Self shown the door. Problem is, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because we've seen programs nosedive after hiring the wrong coach, and Kansas is no different than that.
Yep.
They've got lucky to find the right guy following Roy Williams, who won 2 more national titles than Roy ever won at Kansas, but it feels like we've reached the end. I'd be surprised if Bill Self is back next year.
Same.
That's James Wesley. I'm Ari Tempkin. So much more to get to from this weekend. We'll break it all down with Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 analyst and content creator next. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Houston in white, Kansas in blue. Kim Kissinger, Tony Padilla, Brooks Wells, our officials tonight. And we're underway. It'll be the Cougars to open it up.
Manuel Sharp is all defensive team as well. He's an underrated defender. You talk about his scoring all the time, but he can guard.
Turn around, Sanak. Great rebound by Tugler. Fleming's the penetration. The feed to Sanak for the flush.
JoJo Tugler is a big-time defensive player with those long arms, and he has a live body.
And Kingston Flemings was backpedaling before that ball went through.
They're physical. Their help is there. They will trap ball screens and exchanges and trap the post.
Sanak for 3. Sanak and Tiller, a great matchup of 2 guys at the power forward spots. Both freshmen, both extremely talented, as is that guy. Peterson's got all 5 for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, this is an important steal.
Peterson will slam it. Fleming's letting that shot clock wind down. Now he drives them, and he beat him to the glass.
Boy, how beautiful was that?
Fleming. Sacco trying to gather it. Tips it to Sharp. Flemings is open. How about that?
Well, you talk about an unscripted play. This has been a clinic.
Council into Badunga, and it will eventually go in, and that is the first made field goal of the second half for the Kansas Jayhawks. Here, they'll be trying to repeat what a game it should be tomorrow night, 6 Eastern, right here on ESPN.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. We are presented by Modelo. And let's welcome in Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 analyst and content creator, reacting to the first opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. 8 teams for the Big 12 entered, 3 remain. 6 got to round 2, now 3 to the Sweet 16. Chancellor, how are you?
Good morning, fellas. I am doing well. How about yourself?
Doing very well, thank you. Any surprises from the first weekend for the Big 12 with 8 teams entering and 3 remaining?
I want to say any major surprises. If you ask me, hey, there's only going to be 3 teams to make it, I would have said it would have been Arizona, Iowa State, and Houston. It's really unfortunate that we weren't able to see, Texas Tech at full strength and neither BYU. And obviously, like those guys and Richie Saunders and JT Toppin, they were never going to walk through that door. Fortunately for Iowa State, even without Joshua Jefferson, they were able to overcome missing their All-American, and I'm sure we'll get into that in their game that they had over Kentucky. A great win, a great culture and program win for the Cyclones. But yeah, these were the best 3 teams throughout the Big 12 all season long, and here they remain with an opportunity to still cut down the nets in Indianapolis in just a couple of weeks from now.
Chancellor, I saw that you talked with Arizona forward Tobe Awaka after their Utah State game. What was he saying about Mo Krivas, who only scored 2 baskets in the game but was basically their team MVP?
He said it pretty bluntly. Man, he was a beast, and that he certainly was. As you mentioned, he only scored the basket twice, right? He only scored, only had 2 buckets, but his impact on both sides of the floor were ginormous. You can start offensively. The number of tip outs he had and offensive rebounds. He finished in double-digit rebounding. He had finished the day with 11 and 14. And there was a point where Arizona went on a scoring drought. I believe it was a 7-minute scoring drought in the second half where Utah State was coming back on the Wildcats, and they were putting, as they call, game pressure on Arizona. And at that point, there was a missed shot from Braden Burries, and who gets the rebound? It was Mo Krivas, who ended up kicking out to a Jaden Bradley, who knocked down a 3. And so that one was really able to kind of keep Utah State at arm's distance. And then defensively as well, the number of plays that he was making, sending shots back or discouraging the Aggies from even wanting to take shots, around the paint. And I kind of said it, and I tweeted about it, that if you don't have a big that can bang, in the post and in the paint with Mo Krivas, it's just really hard to beat them because, and even Kelvin Sampson has said it, and he has, a great big in JoJo Tugler. It's just that they're so girthy, right? Whether it's Tobe Awaka or Mo Krivas, they just give you problems, mismatch problems. And so you can't play him off the floor either because, 1, he doesn't get in foul trouble, and then 2, he's able to move his feet, on the perimeter, and Arizona has put together a good defensive system as well to protect him, whenever those moments come about. But he is just such a problem, and so that's why when it comes to Arizona, they just have so many answers to the test. They can put it in the post offensively. It starts with their defense. Then they have 2 closers, and we saw that yesterday in Utah State, where Jaden Bradley made some big shots late in the game, and so did their freshman in Braden Burries with a huge 3 to really ice that game over Utah State. Arizona can beat you in so many different ways, and Mo Krivas is certainly a large part of that.
Let's talk Houston as we're talking with Chancellor Johnson here from Big 12 content creator and basketball analyst. Chancellor, Houston really has not had much resistance the first 2 games. What do you make of their opening weekend?
Man, for the 4th time in NCAA history, a team was able to advance to the Sweet 16 by winning by 30 points in both of their first 2 games. That just tells you how dominant they were in both of those, and it was to be expected, in their first matchup. But in the second one, for them to do what they did against Texas A&M in buckyball, Aggies have had a really good season under the first-year head coach Bucky McMillan, but Houston had no problem whatsoever, against that type of style, and to me, it was led by their culture and their ability to dominate on the offensive glass, especially early on. And I put out a video where there was a point where Houston had 4 offensive rebounds in 1 possession, and what that does to a team is it just demoralizes you, right? Yeah. And so, when you talk about answers to the test, I talk about Arizona. Houston has one of their own. They've shown it year in and year out. That's the reason why they've been to 7 straight Sweet 16s. Think about how ridiculous that is. Teams are happy just to get into the big dance, right? They're happy if they win a game, that is a successful season for them, right? They might extend their coach. For Houston, that is the standard. And so, and I bring that up because, there's so much turnover year in and year out. You get new players come in, but one thing remains the same for the Houston Cougars, and it's their style of play. Whether it's we're going to bang with you on the boards, you have to be able to physically compete with them, on the rebounding and on the glass. And on top of that, we're going to play great defense. And so that is a recipe for success. That gives you multiple answers to a test when things aren't going your way. We saw that with Iowa State, which once again we can get to later on. But that reigned true against the Aggies, and so now they get to come home, right? This is the reason why they were able to switch hosts and give it out to Rice, so they had an opportunity to host the Toyota Center. And now the path is pretty clear. They have an opportunity to play Illinois, a really good team out of the Big Ten, and then they'll get either Nebraska or Iowa. And so the stage is set for them to where they're the highest seed, in the region now, with Florida being knocked out, with Iowa being able to take care of them, and now they get them at home in their own backyard, less than 10 miles away from their campus. If you're a Houston Cougar fan, this is a year that's set up for you to potentially get back to the Final Four and maybe get over the hump and get Kelvin Sampson a national championship.
Yeah, it maybe couldn't work out any better than it has, at least so far this year in the tournament. With Iowa State, Tamin Lipsey goes off in the second half, had 17 of his 26. I know you caught up with Milan Momcilovic after their win over Kentucky. What did he say about Coach T.J. Otzelberger and kind of his halftime message? Because they really turned it on in the second half.
I would bet right now that T.J. Otzelberger is somewhere right now in his office sipping some tea. Did you hear that brother's voice after the game? He was absolutely cooked, right? And so, I was talking to Milan about it, and he said that his halftime message was, we couldn't play any worse offensively, and that was certainly true. And you look up at halftime, and Iowa State was up by 1. Why? Because they found other ways to get it done. Whether that was turn the ball over, making Kentucky turn the ball over, where they had double-digit turnovers. They forced double-digit turnovers for Kentucky in that first half, and they were killing them on the offensive glass as well. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, I'll keep saying it. How can you have multiple answers to the test? When things aren't going your way, what else can you rely on? What else can you hang your hat on? When you're playing a team that's more talented than you, the great equalizer is a 3-ball and your ability to turn them over and get offensive rebounds. And Iowa State was able to do that without their best player. And one thing that I thought was really interesting was Milan didn't shy away from it. They said that early on in those first couple of minutes, they really had to adjust to not having Joshua Jefferson, and that's understandable. He is an All-American. There's a reason why he was a second-team All-American. And so it was a tough loss, but once again, how do you respond without that? Well, you have to have, one of the best winners in the country. And so Tamin Lipsey isn't the most talented guard in the country, but as far as winning and his ability to have an impact on wins, there's not many more point guards or players in the country in general that do that better than him. And then also some of the glue guys on the team. Nate Heisey, he kind of joked with me, Milan Momcilovic did, that I don't see a reason why he can't do that every game. He scored in double figures. So did Killian Toure. And so this is a well-oiled machine that Iowa State has. And that's the reason why, look, I don't know the official NIL numbers that Kentucky was putting up, but I can guarantee you it was significantly a lot more than what Iowa State did. And Iowa State ran them out of the gym, particularly in the second half. And it's because the culture they have in place, the team buy-in, guys knowing their roles, and guys stepping up. It takes a mixture of all of that. And so now that's what you see of Iowa State living to see another day and another week and have an opportunity to maybe get Joshua Jefferson back. And even if they don't, they'll always have a chance because of the culture that they have in place at Iowa State.
Do you think, Chancellor, that this is the end of Bill Self?
Oh, man. I don't know, and I don't, I guess, that's kind of a lazy way out of it, right? But this is the conversation he had yesterday coming after the post game. This is the most that I think he's leaned into it. And obviously, Bill Self has had some health challenges, right? And obviously we want to see Bill Self, take care of himself first, and I think he will. You also have to look at that, this was a tough year for him on the court as well, dealing with some different things, that includes, Darren Peterson, their prize fighter, and it just didn't really work out the way they wanted to. And it's unfortunate because this team had the talent, I believe, to be able to take them much further than a round of 32. And I think that's certainly more than fair to say. And it just, there were times to where, when he was off the court, that Kansas was able to play really well. I'm not putting it all on Darren Peterson. It just unfortunately didn't work out. Was he going to play? Was he not going to play? And I think it was real. Some of the health issues that Darren Peterson, he finally opened up about after the Big 12, saying he was dealing with full body cramps. But as I mentioned, it just didn't really work out. And so, if you're Bill Self, especially in this new era, you got to really ask yourself, do you really want to do this again? Hopping on these flights, not just for the in season, but the recruiting aspect that comes with it, dealing with the NIL, making sure you get the right players. And that's one thing that Bill Self did say after the game of, we got to do a better job of recruiting. And he didn't really flat out go out and say it, but I think that goes back to roster construction. Because look at the teams, as I mentioned, that are still doing it right now. The Iowa States, the Houstons, even within, your own conference, Arizona. There was a mix and match that head coach Tommy Lloyd was able to do there, having a mix of seniors while also getting freshmen that fit what he really wanted to do. And so I think, Bill Self was asked about that of, hey, does Kansas need a new identity change? And he said, hey, I don't think so, but, we'll see with how Kansas goes about recruiting, and adding in the transfer portal. But as you mentioned, the question remains, will Tommy Lloyd be the one to do that? I think we'll get an answer sooner rather than later because he loves that university so much. He wants to put them in the best position to continue the success of the Kansas Jayhawks. But right now, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Bill Self just decides to say, hey, you know what? I've had a great career. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, well said. Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 content creator and analyst. Chance, always appreciate your time, brother. Be well. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Great talking with Chancellor Johnson over the week about what happened this weekend in Big 12 hoops. 3 teams entering the Sweet 16 now in the top 3 out of the Big 12. What does this mean? We'll pick up the pieces for the TCU loss to Duke, UCF losing to UCLA, Kansas falling to St. John's, Texas Tech falling to Alabama, among others, BYU to Texas, among others this weekend in the Big 12. All right, let's get into the March blandness of this tournament.
March blandness.
Thank you. Was that you?
Yeah.
Very creative, very clever.
I thought so too. Didn't even have to use ChatGPT. All noggin.
Wow.
All upstairs.
James Westling, more from his noggin next. I'm Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burries going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began, as Pete lays it in, but they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there for the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble and they've gone cold. Miller driving, dumps it off. Laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burries. He's going to have to put a shot up. And he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan. Hit it! And it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. If you've been watching today's show on Big 12 Studios, you might notice this sweet Big 12 men's basketball championship hat that we've got, courtesy of New Era. The Arizona patch on the side. We had a very similar one for West Virginia. New Era is the championship partner of the Big 12. So Arizona fans, we encourage you to check out New Era's website or the Big 12's website and find these men's basketball championship hats.
Those are sweet.
James doesn't wear a hat, but he still gets it.
Those
are
sweet.
One. Yeah.
You know, this is a very, I would say, bendable bill.
Yes.
So I think I could rock this one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, and you just kind of bent the bill on my hat a little bit more than I. Yeah.
Sorry.
But now we can switch them out.
Oh yeah, mine's over there.
Yeah, since
we could switch them out. All right, excuse me.
I have a very particular fold.
I see that.
There's a process to it. There's a whole thing.
Yeah, a lot of disruption happening this morning. My apologies.
Let's talk a little March blandness, shall we? Another chalky tournament. We do have 11-seeded Texas and 9-seeded Iowa into the second weekend.
Yeah.
But 3 1-seeds get to the second weekend. All 4 2-seeds?
Like, I love it when just these small market mid-majors with smaller budgets and small gyms, schools like Texas and Iowa, make these Cinderella story runs that we can all get behind. It's only the second year in tournament history. It's only the second time ever that there's been no mid-major team in the Sweet 16. And the other time was last season. It's been the last 2 years. It is a power conference dominated tournament. So sure, let's expand it and get more mid-majors in there, because I'm sure that's what the NCAA selection committee would be looking at.
13 of the 32 first-round games were decided by at least 20 points, the most on record. Just one top 5 seed lost. Wisconsin fell to High Point. This on the heels of the 2025 tournament, as has been discussed, with 4 1-seeds in the Final Four. Seeds number 13 or worse won 0 games, and no double-digit seeds made the Sweet 16 in 2025. So this year we have 1 double-digit seed into the Sweet 16. It's Texas, and no 16s won, no 15s won, no 14s won, and no 13s won.
And this is going to be the way it is moving forward. I've seen enough. I am convinced that college basketball has shifted with this house settlement and NIL and the transfer portal. The days of the George Masons and the Butlers and the VCUs are over. Like that was a shocking enough upset in itself, just watching VCU beat North Carolina, who, by the way, North Carolina is without their best player. VCU had to shoot the cover off the ball to even have a chance. I mean, I'm watching these 4-13 matchups, 3-14, and these mid-majors don't even belong on the floor with some of these teams. Like, Kansas should have beat Cal Baptist by 40.
Yeah.
You know, they played about as bad as they could possibly play, and the game was still never in question. And Cal Baptist goes off in the second half just to get it to an 8-point deficit.
Yeah.
Like, it is, the gap is as large as it's ever been in college basketball, and I don't think I don't think there's a way to put the genie back in the bottle. Like, there's no way to rewind it. You go average 16, 17 points per game in a mid-major, you're moving up. But what has been lost in this whole thing is the days of these top 300 guys, not top 100 recruits, the guys that are between 150 and 300, 3-star prospects, playing for power conference schools and developing and becoming really good all-league caliber players, like an Ochai Agbaji at Kansas, who is a 3-star recruit and redshirted halfway through his first year before they had to put him on the floor. Got so much better throughout the course of his career. Those guys are dust in the wind, because those guys now aren't being recruited by power conference schools. They're going to mid-majors, which are basically the new junior college route, where you play 2 or 3 years at your mid-major program and then you level up to the big leagues.
Yeah, here is Tommy Lloyd asked about this in the mid-majors.
I mean, that's a really great question and a deep question, and we could probably go a lot of different directions with it. You know, I think, look where I came from. You know, I came from a program that was a mid-major program that made itself into a major program, and I think I think that parity is great for the game, but things change. And, I think once, finances become part of it, there's going to be a breaking point for some of the lesser programs that just don't have the finances. And I think that's just a obvious statement. So, there's lots of reasons I took the Arizona job. And one of them was kind of forecasting these changes happening, because right when I was getting the job, the NIL deal was rumored, and then it started in July, and I figured Arizona's a place that has a pretty strong, long basketball tradition, and they're going to be excited to invest in basketball, and we have. So I'm thankful for where I am, but I think that's a great question, and I don't have a great answer for you on how to fix it. So let's just leave it at that. But that's a great observation by you.
Okay, so what do you think it is?
Well, I think it's the financial piece, and then the fact that guys can transfer; they don't have to sit out. And I would say,
I think that hurts the mid-majors more than it helps. Like, to me, it helps the bigger schools.
Oh yeah,
but it debilitates the mid-majors.
Absolutely.
The margin for error is so slim, and now that margin has been basically eliminated.
It completely guts them. I mean, you can go average less than 10 points per game at a mid-major and get $500,000 to level up, because teams are looking for depth and to add to their bench. And, the mid-major programs, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because what it does, on the flip side, the glass half full angle is that NCAA tournament games now, moving forward, you get to the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, you are getting high-level, iconic, instant classic games in the tournament that we didn't always used to get. St. Peter's would make a run, then they'd get smoked by 30. Florida Gulf Coast would make a run, then they'd get throttled by 20. George Mason gets to the Final Four, weren't even in the game against Florida once they got that far. So eventually these Cinderella teams do run out of gas, and usually it doesn't end well. But just those runs of players that aren't household names until the tournament, they are household names now because they're playing 15 to 20 minutes game and getting paid major dollars to sit the bench or be a glue guy at power conference schools. But we get like the Final Four games last year with a Duke and Houston and a national championship that was insane. Like, we're going to have that again this year.
Yeah, and look, I think the biggest distinction here is that there's less parity in the opening weekend. Traditionally, it's still been the powers that enter the Final Four, with some exceptions. Butler and VCU and George Mason, those are all teams that broke through, but those were not yearly occurrences. For the most part, it was the huge upsets that occurred in the first 48 hours of the tournament. And now we're seeing less and less of that, I think, because so many of these experienced teams they used to have advantages by being experienced together with quality coaching are gone. And the implications for that are, maybe there's less interest in March Madness, although I'm not sure of that. I think one of the implications is, what about the coaching feeder system, right? Are coaches now going to get plucked at the same level they were previously because without having the success they used to have, will they be as sought after without that success?
Yeah, it's a great question. You look at coaches like Anthony Grant at Dayton. Dayton's playing in the NIT. He's got them in the quarterfinals. He's had a resume where he's won 20 or more games in each of the last 5 seasons, but he hasn't had success in the NCAA tournament. They've been just shy of getting there to the NCAA tournament. Like, what I'm saying is 5 or 10 years ago, he was the coach at VCU for several years, and then he got the Alabama job, but that was pre-NIL, and ultimately got let go from Alabama, even though he still had some moderate to high level of success there. Like, he would be back at a power conference school back in the old days. But now he just hasn't done quite enough at Dayton. And a lot of coaches are going from major program to major program. We see that in these cycles. And, that's a really good point. Like, it used to be 3 or 4 mid-major coaches would move up every year. And I do still think we see that to a degree. Like, Casey Alexander just got hired at K-State from Belmont. Ben McCollum was at Drake last year. You see his run in year 1 at Iowa. It's just not as prevalent and maybe at the forefront as it used to be.
The other thing that's that's interesting about this is it feels like NIL and the portal have actually impacted parity in a positive way in football. and it's done the exact opposite of basketball.
Yeah, you're right. It's a great point. Because I think in basketball, there's so few players on your team.
Right.
You've got 13 scholarships. You really need about 8 dudes.
And one player can make that much of a difference to one team, whether leaving it or being added. But in football, it's about the collective. It's about the 50, 60, 70 players you've got playing together.
And I think over time we could see more parity within the power conferences. Like you could make a case that we've seen that with a 6 seed Tennessee in the Sweet 16,
11-seeded Texas,
11-seed Texas, BYU, a program that never would have been able to land a player like A.J. DeBonsa or Rob Wright, and all the success that they're having in the market. Same thing for Texas Tech and what they've done. So with Kansas and their drop-off, and North Carolina and Indiana still trying to find their way. They didn't make the tournament this year under Darren DeVries. UCLA a 7 seed, Kentucky a 7 seed. Like, we're already seeing parity within the power conferences. Just that gap between the power leagues and the mid-majors is as massive as we've ever seen. Historically ginormous.
All right, let's talk about officiating. That's obviously been a prevailing sentiment to come out of the first weekend. It was maybe most impactful in the TCU-Duke game. Just to recap, TCU had a shot blocked at the rim that should have been goaltending. It was not called goaltending. Jamie Dixon lost his ever-loving mind because all points are really important against Duke as the number 1 seed, and instead of the goaltend, Dixon gets teed up. That's 2 free throws. It's a 4-point swing, and Duke is off to the races after that. To me, there's nothing worse, James, than when an official misses a call and then compounds it by teeing up a coach. But that's what happened in this situation. Here's what Jamie Dixon said after the game about it.
I didn't get set off. I had a conversation with him. There was no raising of the voice. It was conversation as he had asked for. And, what are you going to do? I mean, obviously, we know what it was. Everybody knows what it was. And just, what can you say? It's a big play, and then you compound it. And I didn't cuss. I didn't say anything bad. Had a conversation with him. It's a huge impact on the game.
And it did have a huge impact on the game. And the officiating hasn't been very good this year in the NCAA tournament. Like, I'm watching games where it's just an absolute bloodbath, and they're not calling anything. And then the next time down the floor, they call a hand check foul.
Yeah, off the ball.
And the refs aren't employed by the NCAA. That's kind of where it starts. In a lot of the other major sports, in the NFL, in NBA, even college football, major European soccer leagues, officials are employed by the league or a union with a contract. In college basketball, refs are their own entity, so they don't answer to a league or an oversight committee of their peers. But remember, the NCAA partnered with that sports gambling firm that's trying to crack down on games that may be fixed or leaned one way or the other. That just seems a little bit too coincidental to me that the officiating has been totally bonkers in this NCAA tournament. The first year that's been implemented, but it's got to get better. I mean, it hurt TCU in that game. I thought there were some questionable calls in the Kansas-St. John's game. Just about every game that I've turned on. I'm not saying it's deciding outcomes, but I have been surprised by how poor it's been in certain situations.
Yeah, no, well said. I agree. I'm a firm believer in, officials don't decide games. The players have to take the control out of the officials' hands. I think in the Kansas game there were some questionable calls for sure, but at the end of the day, Kansas get a stop with 3.9 seconds left, something you've done all year, and you're going overtime with the momentum. Instead, you don't get a stop. You can't blame officials. I think the same for TCU. At some point, you got to knock down some shots, but I would say that string of calls impacted the TCU game more so than any of the other games I saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about overinflated basketballs?
Oh, man, this is a thing. I've got some data on this. So we've seen a lot of shots rim out, shots that during the regular season probably go in. And
including what would have been a ridiculous game winner again in the Nebraska game. Who they played?
Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Vandy.
Vanderbilt, there's a screenshot where the ball is halfway through the basket and it pops out. And so the NCAA tournament, number one, they use a different ball that most teams use during the regular season because they've got this huge sponsorship deal that extends through 2028 with Wilson. And they use this basketball, the Wilson, where is it? Evo NXT, right? That's it. You've got the ball. That's it. Nice catch. Well done. All right, so Ari's holding the actual basketball that they use during the NCAA tournament. So the ball is super cushy. Does it feel cushy?
This is an awesome basketball.
Yeah.
It's over $100 if you want to buy it, which is why I don't own one, but it's a ridiculously nice basketball.
It's a really nice ball.
Wilson, send us a few of these. I'd love to tell you how great they are, but they're very expensive.
It's very squishy. But during the season, teams can inflate it to a certain level that they're comfortable with. There's no PSI rule or regulation by the NCAA. So once they get into the tournament, to make it fair so that everybody's playing with the same thing, they just pump those babies to full capacity, which makes them bouncier. There have been players in the Virginia game. There was a player that actually noted how different the ball felt because to keep everybody on a level playing field, they just inflate it to maximum capacity. During the first round of this tournament, teams averaged 15 to 18 turnovers per game, which is up from the regular season average of 12 to 14. Field goal percentage dropped. During the regular season, on average, 44 to 46%. It has dropped to 40 to 44%. So we're talking about 3 or 4 percentage points teams shooting from the floor. 3-point shooting in the tournament is down 3 percentage points to 32%. Like, there's a lot of data that supports that the difference in the basketballs in the tournament, it is playing a role in some of these games and how teams are struggling to adjust to it.
Let me ask you something. How many of these teams use this basketball during the season?
Not a ton. Not as many as you would think.
But this is not the first year of this sponsorship, correct?
Correct.
So at this point, why are you not using this basketball during the season?
Totally agree. And Gonzaga's Mark Few has talked about it. He noted it last year, and really they've been using that specific ball for the last 2 or 3 tournaments. But Wake Forest Steve Forbes made a comment, nice handle.
Thank you.
That the NCAA basketball is the only league in the world where games are played with several different brands of basketballs. You've got teams playing with Nike, Wilson, Under Armour, Spalding, Adidas. Everybody's playing with different basketballs during the regular season.
Yeah. And
it's wild, man.
It is. If I were a team in college basketball, though, I would order 1 million of these.
Yep.
And inflate them to full capacity so that my team is ready to play in the NCAA tournament, because that's the ball they're going to go with, this Wilson Evo NXT, which is a great basketball, and you can find yours in any sporting goods store for over $100.
Yep.
So good luck on that. That's James Westling, Amari Tepkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Our spring football caravan continues. We've just got a few schools left. Oklahoma State is next, and maybe the biggest turnaround potential in the Big 12 is the Oklahoma State Cowboys, Derek Morris. James Westling, Ari Tepkin. More on basketball coming up at the top of the next hour, but Oklahoma State football is next. This is Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
In Kansas City is underway. West Virginia basketball. 2 teams looking for the first points in this game. Provided by Jordan Harrison. Cook trying to get around Miles. Good feed to McCray. Rolls it in for 2. Miles. Defended by Woodley. Miles down the lane. Count it, and 1. Harrison for 2. Jordan Harrison, as Christy talked about right at the top of the telecast.
She usually will take her defender off the bounce and back them down. But right now, and maybe this is going to be 2 for him. There you go.
Yeah, great feed by Miles as she finds Parker. Harrison. Count it. It's a 3. Mountaineers dodge one there. TCU had multiple opportunities.
And right now, with this 9-point lead, West Virginia does not need to be in a hurry. They do not even need to look to shoot the shot until about 5 seconds to go.
Inside of 2 minutes to go. Wheeler on the drive. Big B, good shooter. Can't get it. Rebound, Makalowski.
TCU's got a foul.
They don't get anybody. Here's Shaw all alone for the layup. Hugh Country Roads. For the first time in 9 years, West Virginia, Big 12 tournament champions.
This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin, and our spring caravan continues. Modelo Spring Football earned, not given. The full-time fan knows no off-season. The spring caravan is presented by Modelo. Modelo's off-season rules, Modelo's full-time fan rules. Rule number 31, off-season doesn't mean off. It means research. All right, James, we're talking Oklahoma State football now. Eric Morris, the new head football coach for Oklahoma State, will join us coming up in about 15 minutes from now. But it's going to be a completely new team 1 year following Mike Gundy's final year at Oklahoma State. An absolute legend. Gone now from Oklahoma State. Eric Morris enters. What stands out to you about Oklahoma State football?
I think the first thing is just how high the expectations are for Eric Morris to have immediate success.
Yeah.
I mean, only 25 players returned from last year's team that went 1-11. I mean, my goodness, they had a receiver starting at quarterback their last 3 games. Over 70 newcomers in the building. And then this massive transfer class has been ranked as high as number 7 per The Athletic and 24/7 Sports. Multiple outlets even have Oklahoma State in their way too early top 25. Like, they are already being highlighted as the dark horse in the Big 12 to make a massive uptick. I think it starts with new head coach Eric Morris and just all of his success. He has coached and developed and recruited quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield and Cam Ward and Chandler Morris and John Mateer. Like, the list is long. And then you factor in that he brings Drew Mestemaker with him, who was one of the top passers in college football all of last season, like across the board. Yards, rating, touchdown to interception ratio, completion percentage. He's a 5-tool quarterback. So you've got your guy there, which is probably the number one thing that's been missing for Oklahoma State the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's just having consistency at that position. But also the guys that they bring in at running back and receiver with Caleb Hawkins and like 3 or 4 receivers who are NFL caliber guys, they'll be much more fun to watch. For me, it comes down to how does that translate to the Big 12 outside of those key positions, like defensively at the line of scrimmage? Can you win immediately, be a bowl team in Stillwater? I think they can. I love what they've done on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Drew Mestemaker, as you mentioned, a guy that really blew up last year, but I think still has to show a lot of growth because he's not played the quarterback position a ton. Right? Didn't play in high school, and so still very inexperienced. But, I mean, they add important, impactful players from North Texas, something that Eric Morris made a huge priority. And then on top of that, like some of the best newcomers in the Big 12, when we went through the list, Oklahoma State's got a bunch of them. And I think that's the reason for optimism.
Yeah.
Talent level is dramatically improved year over year.
I mean, they bring in Wyatt Young, who comes over from North Texas at wide receiver, a 4-star wide receiver when it comes to transfer class rankings and stars and how they do that. He's going to be a guy that plays on Sundays. Then they also added a 6'4", 200-pound receiver who was the top receiver at Illinois last year, had a team-high 5 touchdown catches. They bring in a burner from Wake Forest, Chris Barnes, who is their number 1 vertical threat. Miles Coleman has track speed, actually was a high school classmate of Mestemaker who was at North Texas with him. He transfers. But then in the trenches, you know, they bring in 4 guys that were starters at their last stop. Tyler Mercer, a center from KU, who's got Big 12 starting experience. They bring in Braden Nelson, who was an all-AAC left tackle from North Texas. He was Mestemaker's, blindside protector. They bring in Ashton Lepo, a right tackle from Michigan State, who is a 2-year starter for the Spartans. Jacob Sexton was a highly touted prospect on the offensive line who transfers across the state from Oklahoma. So I do think they've addressed their needs on the offensive and defensive line, which is where it really all starts here in the Big 12. Enough to be competitive. Are they going to be top half of the league at those positions? Probably not. But where they could be maybe the most dynamic is at those skill positions.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think what they've done in the portal on the offensive and defensive lines may be the biggest reason for optimism. And, we could look at who they brought in from North Texas, the wide receiver, the running back, the quarterback. Yeah, you've got your 3-headed monster there, but it's the offensive lineman they brought in from North Texas and then the defensive lineman that they brought in overall, for me, that give me the reason for optimism. What does optimism look like? I would say getting back to a bowl game would be a hugely impactful finish this season for Oklahoma State, for an Oklahoma State team that's won how many Big 12 games over the last 2 seasons?
None?
0.
I mean, and just real quick on the defense, James Williams, edge rusher from Florida State, 35 tackles, 9 TFLs, 7 sacks for Florida State in the ACC. Huddleston, a defensive end from North Texas, was a really explosive edge rusher. They bring in a defensive tackle from Louisville who reunites with defensive coordinator Cassidy, who coached him at Abilene Christian, and then he leveled up to Louisville. They also bring in Mo Horn from Texas Tech, who's a cornerback that they outbid Texas Tech for. And Mo Horn was on the field a lot as kind of their third corner in Lubbock. So they've added pieces defensively. But to answer your question, like for me, we're going to learn a lot about Oklahoma State the first 2 weeks of the season because they open up week 1 at Tulsa. Remember, that's when the wheels fell off last year for Mike Gundy. It was like their second game of the year on a Friday night when Tulsa went into Stillwater, dominated in the trenches, and got out of there with a win. Tulsa's got Trey Lamb in his second year. They expect to be better. They have a pretty nice NIL budget. And then they play Oregon week 2. Like his home opener is against Oregon, who's going to be a preseason top 5 team, with Moore coming back at quarterback for them, who turned down the NFL because Oregon signed him to a ridiculous contract. So it's not real. There's no cupcake early on until week 3 when they play Murray State. We're going to know right away. So I think a successful season, make a bowl game, which first-year head coaches in the Big 12 the last 2 years, that's been really tough sledding. Like, coaches haven't been able to get their teams to a bowl. As you look at their schedule on Big 12 Studios, it's brutal, man. Then your first Big 12 game is on the road at West Virginia, year 2 of Rich Rod. We will learn a lot about Oklahoma State immediately.
Well, in November, they go 4 straight weeks at K-State, Texas Tech at home, at Arizona State, Kansas at home. That's a tough finish. Think about 2 of the toughest road games in the Big 12, at Kansas State, at Arizona State, not to mention Texas Tech mixed in there on November 14th. So, you know, one of the things I think as we talk about teams and preview the upcoming season is the lack of buys. You know, last year we saw teams have 2, even 3 buys. This year it's 1.
Yeah, and I love that from a fan's perspective because it means more teams are playing each and every Saturday. But Oklahoma State's going to have to steal a game here or there on the road this season, which is another thing they haven't been able to do the last 2 years. They've just been destroyed on the road because you essentially have a built-in loss against Oregon. Like, that is a tough ask for a first-year head coach to beat Oregon the second week of the regular season, even though it's in Stillwater. So what that means is you've got to protect your home field at home, and then you've got to steal one on the road. And they play 5 Big 12 road games. They only have 4 Big 12 home games. So you've got to win at West Virginia or at Houston or at Iowa State or at Kansas State. I mean, the other games against first-year head coaches are all on the road for Eric Morris. So I think 5-7 for this team is not a bad year. If they get to 6-6, build them a statue. Sign him to a long-term deal because that would be an incredible feat.
What makes you most optimistic about this team? Like, what's your reason for optimism? Is it Drew Mestemaker?
It's the offense in general.
Yeah.
Like Eric Morris's teams, even at North Texas, because at North Texas he won 5 games his first year, got him to a bowl his second year, went 7-5, and then had that massive breakthrough in his third year. Because at the non-power conference level, the group of 5, they were losing 60, 70 players every year in the portal that were moving up and becoming starters at power conference schools. So it took them a while. So I would say my point is even in those seasons, they were still scoring 40 or 45 points a game. I mean, they are going to be explosive. He has a really good feel for tempo, when to slow it down, when to speed it up. They're going to be scoring 35, 40 a game right away. It's can they stop those bigger, more physical teams on the other side of the ball to be competitive in year 1. So just the offense in general.
More on Oklahoma State as our Modelo Spring Football series continues. Spring football earned, not given. The full-time fan knows no off-season. Spring Caravan presented by Modelo. Our Spring Caravan tour stopping at Stillwater, Oklahoma, talking Oklahoma State football. Eric Morris, the new football coach at Oklahoma State, joins us next. You are not going to want to miss our conversation with Eric Morris. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Eric Morris is next. This is our Spring Caravan presented by Modelo.
The focus needs to be on the players and on their great play on the court, so I support the Big 12's decision 100%.
Underway, and it is Arizona with the first possession. This Iowa State team 27-6 on the season, 12-6 in league play. They finished in a three-way tie for third, but because the tiebreakers fell down to the 5 seed.
Is what makes him so incredibly valuable, and that's one of the biggest reasons he's Big 12 Player of the Year.
Two-man game, Lipsy and Buchanan. Rebound, Lipsy. Momcilovic for 3. And they are extremely talented, and this guy is one of the reasons why. Tobe Awaka came up with a rebound, couldn't finish, got it back again. And Del Orso knocks down his second 3 of the night. Pete averages almost 3 assists per game. Deflected by Del Orso. He's got it back. A little Euro step, and it rolls in for him. What a sequence, Jay, here in the closing seconds of the first half.
2 huge threes in transition by Momcilovic.
He's going to try one more. Got it! Oh!
Tobe Awaka down on the baseline with Krivas. They can duck in hard.
Bradley can't shake Torrey. Forces it up and hits. Finds Buchanan. 10 to shoot. Buchanan looking for somebody to give it to. Finds Lipsy. 5 to shoot. Tie game!
Remember, it's not just the first shot. It's the offensive rebound.
Bradley trying to do it himself. He does! He hit it!
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, and our Modelo spring road trip continues as we tour Big 12 country and take a quick pit stop on our way to Provo and Stillwater, Oklahoma, to talk with the first-year head football coach of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, Eric Morris, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. It's great to have you on, Coach Morris. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about you guys?
Doing very well, thank you. Really excited to have you a part of the Big 12. You know, and there's so many things to get to talk with you about, but let's start with your path. You know, you've had a really interesting path. You know, I know when you were on with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on 3, you mentioned, you know, that many of your mentors told you that you were making career suicide when you took the Incarnate Word job. You know, just tell us about your path and your biggest influences and, you know, the quote-unquote career suicide you took at taking that job.
Yeah, I've had an interesting path. I think, you know, I've always prided myself. I think I'm proving people wrong. I think I had that approach when I was a player, and not many people gave me a chance to play at the Big 12 level and went on to be successful there. And then obviously just had so many great coaches that were around me at that time, with Mike Leach's staff and Mike being, you know, the one that took a chance on me, both as a player and a guy who gave me my first chance as a full-time position coach. And so owe a ton to Coach Leach, obviously. I still model a lot of my program around Mike. In fact, last night we had Pirates Paradise, which is mat drills that we start at 10 o'clock at night. And you know, it's pretty miserable for our kids to sit there and think about it all day. We used to call it midnight maneuvers with Coach Leach, and still, when I call some of the old Leach guys and tell them I'm still doing midnight maneuvers, they think I'm crazy in this era. But yeah, I think, you know, Leach is probably my biggest influence, and then obviously I think, you know, you see Dana Holgerson and Lincoln Riley and Sonny Dykes, who were my position coaches, are guys that had a big influence on me as well. And but yeah, I mean, taking the Incarnate Word job, I think it was stepping out of the box a little bit, and it was a place that had no history, a place that had no resources. No traditions, and so really it was a blank slate that I could go and start something and see if I could get something started in the Southland. And luckily, you know, early on in that little sequence, our second year there, we signed Cam Ward, who ended up being the first pick of the draft. And I think anytime you're able to get a kid of that caliber, but it wasn't just Cam. I mean, we had really good players around Cam, and we're able to win, you know, 2 or 3 championships there in the Southland and kind of change the trajectory of that program.
Eric, you were like one of the biggest names out there this offseason. What made Oklahoma State the right fit for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, some of the things here that people think maybe are a turnoff were actually something my family and I were looking for. I mean, the fact that this is a small community. My wife and I both grew up in really small farming communities. And we're at the stage in our life where we have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. And for us to raise those kids in a place like Stillwater was something that was very encouraging for us, something that we were looking for. And so it's been such a welcoming community. I mean, I think it's just been phenomenal for not only me, but my wife and my kids to be able to embrace ourselves in Stillwater and get out in the community and go, you know, experience everything this town's about and go support the other, you know, programs that are having success. I mean, we've been to a ton of basketball games right now. Obviously, the golf program's been so good for the past, you know, 20 years or so. Been to some baseball games. Wrestling has been phenomenal. I've never watched a wrestling match in my life. I'm like the biggest wrestling fan ever right now. And so it's been good for us to be able to, you know, be at this level, at the P4 level, but also raise my family and be a part of a community that's such a small-knit type family.
Oklahoma State wrestling is the best in the Big 12, and it's a really good conference, so it's a great point about Oklahoma State wrestling. We're talking with Eric Morris here. You know, I'm so intrigued by how you handle and develop the quarterback position. And look, I mean, there's some big heavy hitters on this list. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Ward, John Mateer, you know, and now Drew Mestemaker, to name a few. But even some of these guys that are less heralded and maybe haven't gone on to have, you know, Hall of Fame NFL careers like Mahomes, they've all had career years under you. At North Texas going back, you know, before Mestemaker, Chandler Morris had his best season with you as the head coach. And even before him, these guys have sort of outlier seasons when you step in. So, what do you do? How do you coach the quarterback position?
Well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. I'm just joking. So, and same thing. I think Coach Leach was such an interesting guy in the way he taught the quarterback. And then right after him, I had Coach Kingsbury that I worked for 5 years, and they were two totally different the way that they thought about the position, the way they taught it, the way that you studied, the way that you prepared, the way you did drills. And so I thought I took the positives, from both of them. Mike thought really broadly, and he wanted to see space and not talk about coverage, and he didn't talk about, all the different specifics. I mean, you're going to go through your reads in our offense, and you're going to be really good at it. And then Cliff Kingsbury was so detailed and so organized, and he was Tom Brady's backup for a couple of years, Drew Brees' backup. So he'd been around some of the best minds, and they created all these different quarterback notes and the way that they would challenge one another and study. And so we've kind of put together a little system that combines some of that together. And I think just the way that we do it in the meeting room, and then the way that transfers from the meeting room to the practice field. And then ultimately, we want to get them ready from Monday till Friday, and Saturday, we don't do much with them. Really, it's almost the opposite. We give them the keys to the car. We allow them to make checks out there if they're seeing stuff. I want them to be super comfortable on game day and be able to have some ownership in what they're doing on game day. And so, and I don't do this alone. I mean, at Incarnate Word, and, I have Mac Leftwich, who's now the offensive coordinator at Texas Tech, was my quarterback coach. And now I have a guy named Sean Brophy who played quarterback for me at Incarnate Word. And so I've had some really good people around me too that have helped me get these guys ready to go out there and perform on Saturdays.
And tell us how you recruited Drew Mestemaker as a guy that did not play quarterback in high school.
Yeah, by fate, by luck, don't know what it is yet, but no, so excited that we have Drew. Now, the one thing I think that's impressive, and Drew didn't play, and obviously, I had a key in a friend of mine who's a quarterback coach. They called me and told me he saw Drew throw, thought, how good he was at just purely throwing the ball. Didn't know, if the kid could process information or go out there and do what he's doing on Saturdays. But I think, I've never cared who is the guy that's pulling the trigger. I've always been fair, and whoever gives us the best chance to win is going to go out there and play for us. And so, I think Drew was shocked when, he came in as a freshman walk-on, didn't play in high school. And then all of a sudden, a month and a half into camp, he's our backup quarterback, and he's going out there and getting reps, and he had beat out these 3 other scholarship guys that we had that were older. I think that was kind of Drew's first moment. He's like, holy smokes, that coach believes in me a little bit. And then, we played really we played at Texas Tech. We were getting beat at North Texas Drew's freshman year, and so just kind of in some mop-up duty. Drew goes out there in the last 2 drives and leads 2 amazing drives, scores a touchdown on one of them. So I think that was kind of the first moment looking at Drew in the huddle, realizing, hey, he wasn't anxious out there. He wanted to go out there. He didn't stutter when he was making the play calls to the huddle. He had the confidence about him out there communicating to the guys, and goes down there and scores a touchdown and runs off in Jones AT&T Stadium and chest bumps a couple guys and scored his first college touchdown. And so, yeah, that was kind of the first time I'm like, okay, this kid has a little moxie about him and has a little swagger about him. And it's not only is he a good practice player, but I think he might be able to do this in a real-life game.
Mm.
Well, and Eric, I remember before a North Texas game, you were telling us kind of your recruiting philosophy and how you find some of these hidden gems. Caleb Hawkins, the incredible year he had at running back. I think you offered him after watching him play basketball when he had just a couple of sick highlight reel dunks. And then I think you said you offered Baker Mayfield after watching him play baseball. So can you elaborate on some of those stories and how you find these guys?
Yeah, I liked all the guys had good tape, good football tape. I liked him before I saw him play the second sport. So, but I've always really believed in going and watching these guys. I think it's really hard to see, a guy's expressions on the football field, the way he communicates with his teammates, leadership traits, just how he handles adversity, how he's going to respond, what his body language like, and it's hard to tell with a kid in a helmet and in this full gear out there on a football field. I think really watching them, in these different sports, especially basketball. I love watching basketball and watching them communicate and be what kind of teammate they are. But yeah, all these guys, when you go out and watch them and you watch them, they get these different traits and athletic abilities. I think from throwing a ball, from spatial awareness, from playing with their eyes up and seeing defenses. And so I've always loved to go and see just what kind of athlete they are. And Mike Leach told me a long time ago. I was the receivers coach at Washington State, and I went to watch a receiver, and I filmed him on my iPhone for Mike to send back some video, and I only filmed him catching the ball because he's a receiver. And so Mike sent back to me, and he said, "Well, did you film him throwing the football?" And I said, "No, Coach, I didn't film him throwing it. Like, he's a receiver. Why would I film him throwing it?" And he said, "Well, usually guys that have grown up playing catch their whole life, they're really good at throwing it too. The best receivers I've ever had know how to throw it." He said, "Well, he's not going to be the quarterback for us, but he at least looks natural throwing the football." I remember thinking to myself, like, what am I even doing? So I went back to that school and I filmed the receiver throwing the ball. Like, I actually did it. And I was, 23. Like, I remember telling, one of my fellow teammates back at the time that was a new coach in it, that how crazy Mike Leach was. He wanted me to film the receivers throwing the football. But now, like, as I've evolved and my mind, like, kind of thinks around it, I actually think it's pretty smart. And I think that guys that know how to, if you really watch a guy that knows how to throw a football, like, he usually has pretty good ball skills, even if he's a receiver or running back.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Cannot wait to visit with you at Media Days here in a few months. Have a great spring, Coach. Thanks so much for your time. Be well.
God bless, guys. Have a great week.
You too. Take care. Thanks, Eric. Oklahoma State football coach Eric Morris is joining us here on Big 12 Radio as part of our spring caravan. This is our Modelo spring road trip, heading out across Big 12 country and making a stop here at Oklahoma State. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Houston in white, Kansas in blue. Kip Kissinger, Tony Padilla, Brooks Wells, our officials tonight. And we're underway. It'll be the Cougars to open it up.
Manuel Sharp is all defensive team as well. He's an underrated defender. He's talking about his scoring all the time, but he can guard.
Turn around, Sanak. Great rebound by Tugler. Fleming's the penetration. The feed to Sanak for the flush.
JoJo Tugler is a big-time defensive player with those long arms, and he has a live body.
And Kingston Flemings was backpedaling before that ball went through.
They're physical. Their help is there. They will trap ball screens and exchanges and trap the post.
Sanak for three. Sanak and Tiller, a great matchup of two guys at the power forward spot. Both freshmen, both extremely talented, as is that guy. Peterson's got all five for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, this is an important steal.
Peterson will slam it. Fleming's letting that shot clock wind down. Now he drives him, and he beat him to the glass.
Boy, how beautiful was that?
Fleming. Sacco trying to gather it. Tips it to Sharp. Flemings is open. How about that?
Well, you talk about an unscripted play. This has been a clinic.
Council into Badunga, and it will eventually go in, and that is the first made field goal of the second half for the Kansas Jayhawks. Here, they'll be trying to repeat what a game it should be tomorrow night, 6 Eastern, right here on ESPN.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today. Final hour of the show today. Full reaction to the weekend that was of the NCAA tournament. Let's talk about it now with our buddy Fran Fraschilla. Of course, you can catch him calling games on ESPN all season, and now you can catch him as part of King and the Coach, King McClure and Fran Fraschilla, each and every week throughout the NCAA tournament. You can catch tonight's episode at 6 o'clock right here on TuneIn, 5 o'clock Central. Fran, how are you?
Outstanding. Good to be on with you guys this morning. Long weekend of a lot of basketball. I'm prepping for South Regional play with Spiro Ditas on Westwood One.
Awesome.
And Houston will be hosting with 3 Big Ten teams, surprisingly.
Yeah, and there you are in Allen Fieldhouse. So let's just start right there. My alma mater, Kansas, once again, not getting past the first weekend. Probably shouldn't be surprised based on how this team played all year. But I guess just your thoughts on their loss to St. John's, and then 2, do you predict that Bill Self will be coaching next year?
Well, it came up on the press conference, as you know, and I've had peripheral conversations with Coach, and of course we've been friends a long time, and it always comes back to how he's feeling. Obviously, he's had a couple of hard episodes people know about, and so I don't know the answer as to whether he'll be back or not. I do know this: he's pondering it. I know he's got grandkids now. He's had an incredible career. No one would besmirch his reputation if he walks away now. But I don't have a clear answer, Ari. In some ways, as you know, because you've been around that program, he's one of the most competitive people you'll ever be around. He loves the sport. He loves the kids. But this year had to probably take a lot out of him because it was just such a weird year with obviously Peterson. And this is the 3rd straight year of trying to integrate portal guys. He did it somewhat successfully with Trey Wright and Melvin Council Jr. And he's got a great recruiting class coming in next year. That's going to be the interesting thing. You know, if they add a couple guys in the portal, if Flory stays, he's kind of a late first rounder. Bryson Tiller's got a chance to be very good. I could see him coming back, but I don't have any answers right now.
Fran, did you like the way Kansas handled the end of that game with all the fouls in the final 10 or 12 seconds?
Yeah, I thought it was good strategy. They had all of them to give, and you kind of trying to want to break up, Rick Pitino's momentum because he's a great coach, and yet when that happens, when you have the situation where you're continually fouling, or you foul once or twice, and that in their case it was more than once or twice, you just have to go make a play. And I was thinking of the Florida game when they got the ball late in the game and Xavier Lee drives in, has a layup, and he overpasses. And in this case, the littlest guy on the floor, pretty much, Starling, just got to the basket, made a broken play. You know, Chuck Daly, the great Hall of Fame Pistons coach, Olympic coach, Dream Team coach, he used to say, what will the player do when the play breaks down? Because the play will break down.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And give him credit, the young man made a great play. But that game was kind of a microcosm of the season in that they made the furious comeback, and Peterson did play, and he played well for the most part. Didn't shoot it particularly great, but he was healthy the last 11, 12, 13 games. But weird year for Kansas. Kansas fans, I'm sure, are not happy with the year because of what their expectations are. But it's going to be a very interesting offseason for sure.
Fran, let's say Self does decide to step aside and retire. If you're Kansas, who are you hiring?
The best coach possible. Honestly, you gotta try to go get the best coach possible. Now I know there's internal, stuff with Jacques Vaughn, who's a tremendous guy, an all-time legend at Kansas, has been an NBA head coach, so he's got some chops, so to speak. But I also think before you do that, and they may end up doing that, and Jacques may be great. He's really a great human being. I think you just got to figure out if he's the best coach, or can you go get, the next hot, I wouldn't say hot young coach, because I don't think Kansas needs a hot young coach. Let's say like a Jared Calhoun, for example, who may end up in the league anyway.
Right.
From what we're hearing, coach at Utah State, as you guys know. But I think you just got to explore trying to find out who the best coach available in the country is, who might want to do what Bill did 23 years ago, and that is replace a legend in Roy Williams. Bill did it as well as anybody could ever expect it, and with the national championships. But I think you got to go that route as well.
You know, Fran, Ari brought up a really good point earlier when we were talking about the Power Conference teams and schools versus the mid-majors. It's the second year in a row that there's no mid-majors in the Sweet 16. Do you think, is it harder now in this new era to identify those quality coaches that may be at mid-major programs because they're not in the tournament, or it's harder to win now at mid-major schools than it's ever been before?
Well, it's a good point, James. It's certainly trending that way because of what you see with all the chalk remaining, and obviously the transfer portal and players, gravitating from low and mid-major up to power conferences certainly hurt. Well, it certainly hurt March Madness. We did have a couple, VCU, I guess, at the A10, High Point, both represented well. But yeah, probably, let's face it, Bill Self was at Tulsa, couldn't get the Missouri job, and it went to Quinn Snyder, and it took him to go to Illinois for him to then get the Kansas job. And listen, there's some smart ADs out there that know there's some rising stars in the mid-major level, but the old story about winning the press conference is such that, let's just go back to Kansas for a second. At some point, when Bill does retire, they're going to probably try to get a high major guy who sees Kansas as the ultimate job. It could be like a Nate Oates type. Wouldn't surprise me if a Todd Golden was interested.
That's my top two, Fran.
Yeah. I mean, there's some guys in the league that might make a run at, but I don't know whether they would leave their schools. But so, yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think you owe it to yourself, if you're Kansas, to try to go get the best coach because of what that program means historically as a blue blood.
Yeah. I also wonder if UNC, if they do move on from Hubert Davis, if they'd be interested in TJ Otzelberger, another name that you
saw that.
You probably were referencing there, Fran, in terms of internal guys.
Yes.
What else stands out to you about the Big 12? 8 teams enter, 3 remain, 6 made it to the second round.
Yep.
BYU has the injuries. UCF maybe ran out of gas a little bit. Texas Tech had the injuries. What else, Fran, overall, just about the Big 12 in the first weekend?
I think, first of all, the concern, I haven't heard anything this morning. I was up early working on some stuff for the South region. The concern about Joshua Jefferson. Think about it.
Yeah.
The Big 12 may have lost, we hope he plays, but they have lost definitely 2 McDonald's. They've lost 2 likely close to first-team All-Americans, J.T. Toppin for sure. Joshua Jefferson has been on everybody's All-American list. Richie Saunders would have been in the mix somewhere like third team. And that's 3 key guys. And if you think about, there's no way that Texas Tech, I think, handles what happened last night if JT Toppin's in the lineup. They were just a different team. I think they were 4-4 maybe off the top of my head after JT got hurt.
Yes.
So the injuries were devastating to the league. There's no question about that. Incredibly impressive what TJ did yesterday to beat Kentucky. But having said that, let's assume Joshua Jefferson can play. Gosh, they got a great chance to go to the Final Four. Have you guys heard anything this morning, or is that still up in the air?
No, I think it's up in the air.
Okay, so let's assume he plays. That's 3 legitimate Final Four teams coming out of different regions, which would be amazing. Arizona, I think, is going to get to the Final Four, and right now, despite the fact that 3 Big Ten teams are playing really well, I think nobody was probably happier to see Florida lose last night than the Houston coaching staff.
Yep.
So I think there's a really good chance that two Big 12 teams are going to get to the Final Four, and we'll see about Iowa State. Nothing would shock me based on the fact that, TJ's done an incredible job with his team. Given the injuries, that would be a phenomenal year for the league.
How about Houston? Dominated Texas A&M, just pounded them on the glass, had an extended run of 21-4 to really blow the thing wide open. Is Houston playing their best basketball, and what do you like most about the way they've looked?
Well, I think that we all realize, those of us who are smart enough, and I put you guys into that category, and a lot of other people besides me, is that the 3-game losing streak was based mainly on competition. 3 top 15 teams, 2 on the road. Obviously, that happens a lot at Iowa State and Kansas. Losing at home to Arizona. We know how good Arizona, I think, is the best team in the country going into the weekend. So once they caught their breath, and honestly, I got to tell you, James, Florida being out of it really helps them, because no team was more similar to Arizona in the tournament. 2 teams, Michigan and Florida, because of the size. And I thought Houston would have trouble with Florida because of their size inside. As it turned out, their guard play wasn't good enough. So I think Houston's going into this weekend on a high, and 3 teams that they're going to be favored to beat. We know one and done, anything happens. But no, I think you're right. The 2 freshmen are playing great. Sinak, think about it, 18 rebounds in the opening game, and then a really solid game. They got, Sharp playing well, using. That was an impressive win. I did think Bucky Ball might give him trouble, but I was wrong. They just, they blew A&M out of the water. They were just more, I don't want to say competitive, but they were just better, clearly better than A&M.
Fran, what do you make of this lack of parity? There's been a lot of talk about, all of the top seeds advancing. There was no only Wisconsin lost as a top 5 seed. Everybody other, there were no upsets. Basically, you had Texas as an 11 seed getting into the Sweet 16, and Iowa as the 9 seed. But those are obviously not mid majors. Like, what do you make of the situation going on with college basketball right now in terms of parity?
Well, I think it actually is going to help the ratings, because if you think, honestly, Ari, if you think about it, we love the Cinderellas like the opening round, but we don't really want to see High Point in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
I'm saying that as a basketball fan.
No, you're right.
You know what I mean? I'm not putting them down at all. I mean, if that were to happen, or VCU, cool. But then I think really we want to see the best teams in the country. When I say best teams, again, no disparagement of High Point, who was tremendous and gave our Arkansas a really good game. But I think you want to see, like, that East Regional is in some years is a Final Four. With all those Hall of Fame coaches and blue blood type programs, we want that. And I think if Florida had gotten through to play Houston on Saturday, we'd be like, salivating. So as it is, I think that seeing Michigan, Arizona, Houston, Duke, Michigan State, UConn, I think that's what the average fan wants to see on the second weekend. And I think it's setting up for whoever comes out of these 4 regions. We're going to have a great Final Four in Indianapolis. So, part of it is what I said earlier. The transfer portal has sucked up some of the low and mid majors up to the top level, power conferences. And so those teams outside of a High Point or a Utah State or a VCU are not quite as good as what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And now you look at these potential matchups and the games that we're definitely going to see in the Sweet 16, and they're going to be tough for those 1 seeds. So of the 3 1 seeds left, who has the toughest opponent? And I'll give you the matchups. Duke plays St. John's. Arizona plays Arkansas, and all that linked with the Brazil kid. And then Michigan has that red-hot Alabama team.
Well, I think St. John's is going to give Duke a problem. Duke is still, reeling from no Caleb Foster. Listen, John Shire is a good friend and a great young coach, and they're going to be favored to beat St. John's, except that St. John's has got a lot of athletic guys. They have a coach who's won every different way you can win a national championship. Rick's won with quick teams, with big teams, with zone teams. So right now he's scheming how to slow down Cam Boozer. And it's going to be a great regional, as I said, with UConn and Michigan State in that regional as well. I would think that Duke has the toughest road of those teams. And then when you look at the 2 seed in the South, Houston, it's not. I'm not to say they can't get beat, because they can, but Houston is probably really happy that they're not going to see a Florida team, as I said, that looks remarkably like Arizona, a team that, beat them twice this year.
Yeah, well said. Great point. All right, Fran, any final thoughts here? I mean, do you think the Big 12 gets 2 Final Four teams?
I do. I just think Arizona, to me, they're the best team in the country, and it's close with Michigan, Duke, and, some others. And I think Houston, it's home, but it's not home, because if you guys followed Oklahoma City with Nebraska and know anything about them, there are going to be a ton of red and white in that building. And, of course, Houston's red and white too. But I guess that's going to be the intriguing thing, is that Houston actually plays the toughest team in that region in the Sweet 16 and not the Elite 8, at least on paper. Houston, Illinois could easily in some years be a Final Four game. So
yeah, right.
Their toughest game to get out of there and get to Indianapolis may be Thursday night, when the great Spiro Ditas and I are going to be on the call for Westwood One.
Fran Fraschilla will be on the call for Westwood One. Fran, you're the best, buddy. Also, make sure to check out King and the Coach with Fran Fraschilla and King McClure, which you can catch tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central. Thanks, Fran.
Thanks, Fran.
Always a pleasure, guys. See you soon.
Take care, brother. Thank you. Great. Fran Fraschilla joining us, breaking down his thoughts on the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. The 2 names that he mentioned with Kansas, if Bill Self does decide to hang it up, are the 2 names that I'd be after. It should be Alabama head coach Nate Oates and Florida head coach Todd Golden.
As a Kansas State alum, would not welcome either of those guys in the Big 12.
Yeah. Would you prefer Bruce Weber?
Yeah, Bruce Weber, John Gross. Who else can we grab from Illinois? Not Brad Underwood. Wouldn't like him either.
Yeah. And look, in terms of Fran's thoughts here, he thinks both Houston and Arizona are going to be Final Four teams. I think if I were to repick, I'd probably take the Final Four of Arizona, Michigan, Duke, and Houston. I went with Arizona, Michigan, Duke, and Illinois. But 3 Big 10 teams are in that South region. Big 12 is the only one, Houston, that is the only non-Big 10 team. It's Nebraska and Iowa and Houston and Illinois.
Gosh, let's see. If we were to have a redo at our bracket.
What was your Final Four?
So I've got 3 of the 4 intact. I had Arizona, Michigan, Virginia was my I'm sorry. I had Houston, Arizona, Duke, and Virginia. Virginia was kind of my sleeper pick. They got beat by Tennessee yesterday. But if I was to redo it, the one team that we haven't really talked much about that I think looked really good yesterday was UConn. UConn won by 16 against UCLA.
Great point.
They have got dudes that remind me of that team that was a 4 seed and won the entire thing and were just pounding people in the NCAA tournament. Like, they have depth. I think they can beat Duke. So I'd probably go UConn, Arizona. I do think Houston gets there. And then keep an eye on, Iowa State if Jefferson's healthy. And Alabama's going to be a nightmare matchup for Michigan.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Big 12 today, Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Travis Hines from the Ames Tribune, Des Moines Register, joins us next. Break down what's going on with Joshua Jefferson and Iowa State still alive despite losing their best player, all because of Tamin Lipsey. Travis Hines is next. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burries going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began, as Pete lays it in, but they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there for the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble, and they've gone cold. Miller driving, dumps it off, laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burries. He's going to have to put a shot up, and he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan hit it, and it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. 8 Big 12 teams entered the dance on Thursday. 3 remain following the first weekend. 1, including Iowa State. And joining us now to talk about the Cyclones is Travis Hines from the Des Moines Register. All right, Travis, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing very well. Crazy start for Iowa State yesterday, but they finished, and give credit to Tamin Lipsey. Lipsey did not want the season to end and played like it, 26-10. Just your thoughts on the weekend for Iowa State.
Yeah, obviously a great weekend for Iowa State with one big asterisk with
Right.
Joshua Jefferson's ankle being turned the way it was and now questionable for Friday. But I think when you look at what they were able to do this weekend, even without him, where they just demolished Tennessee State, and then I thought had one of the grittier performances I have seen from TJ's teams over the last 5 years. And that's a high bar to clear. But for them to play the way that they did against Kentucky, despite shooting it terribly, really for the first 38 minutes of the game, I thought was a testament to their buy-in and their belief in that the defense is going to win the day for them and that they're going to have to figure out the offense, or at least be patient for offense to come. And that's exactly what happened. And really, by the midway point, maybe a little bit earlier that second half, it was clear that Kentucky wanted no more part of Iowa State, especially defensively. Like, their body language got bad. Their ability to just protect the ball, even in the basic way, fell apart. And I just thought that was Iowa State absolutely imposing its will on Kentucky yesterday.
Yeah, when did this game kind of switch, or when did Iowa State flip the script, if you will?
I thought the fact that they took a 1-point lead into halftime, despite starting, I think, 1 of 14 from 3 and shooting under 30%, I think that was huge, because it showed that Iowa State was getting good looks, and if they started making them, they could run away and hide. Because initially, the fear, I think, from Iowa State fans, and when you're watching it, is, okay, this kind of looks like the Arizona game from a couple weeks ago, where they're playing well defensively, but offensively they can't get anything inside against the size, and they're not shooting it well at 3. And they got almost blown out in Arizona, losing that game. I think that was the fear. But when they were able to make a couple shots late, get some turnovers, and get some transition opportunities, I thought it was pretty clear heading into halftime, like, hey, if they have a average offensive half, this is probably a 10-point win for them.
All right, so what's the deal with Josh Jefferson?
I think there's hope that he can play Friday. He's getting an MRI later this morning. I think the hope for Iowa State is that there's no new information in that MRI. He got the X-ray over the weekend that was negative, and everything that Iowa State has said, that it's really, being able to get some mobility and being able to deal with the pain. But I mean, you guys saw that replay too. That was a pretty gnarly ankle sprain. Joshua Jefferson is a big man at 6'9", 240 pounds. That's a lot of size that goes on that ankle. He still hasn't really been able to put weight on it or to walk on it yet, but has four days now to try to make some progress. And I think Friday would be tough, but I think from everything I've heard, it is not been yet ruled out.
I guess with the way Iowa State played without him, I'm still convinced that even if he doesn't go, Iowa State can go far in this tournament. I mean, having Nate Heise on the floor for 36 minutes I don't think is a bad thing. He had a huge game with 12 points, hit a 3. So how do the dynamics change when Jefferson's not available?
Yeah, it really changes them offensively because they run so much through him because he's such a mismatch with the way that he can shoot it, the way he can handle it, and in my opinion, most particularly the way that he can pass it. He is an elite passer, not just for a big man. He is just an elite passer, and it really allows them to do a lot of different things where without him, I think they were a lot more dependent on the transition opportunities because things don't work quite as well in the half court. But the flip side is that when they're playing without Joshua Jefferson and they're playing with Nate Heise, as you mentioned, playing 36 minutes, their ability to pressure and trap defensively to generate those turnovers, to get out and run, probably goes up a little bit. So there is a trade-off. They're certainly not a better basketball team, no doubt, without Joshua Jefferson. But they do have the depth and versatility where they can pull a lever or two to try to get a little bit closer to the ceiling that they would have with J-Jeff. But I think they can beat Tennessee without him. It gets tough, especially like the Volunteers are incredible on the offensive glass, so getting smaller against them is not ideal. But I think like you look on the later in the weekend where you're looking at Alabama or Michigan, I think things get pretty tough if you can't roll out with your best group.
What type of crowd do you think Iowa State will get? I mean, obviously they travel to Kansas City. Chicago isn't a far drive from Ames. What do you think this will look like?
I think there'll be a ton of Iowa State fans. Like, this will be the third time in 10 years now that they've had a Sweet 16 in Chicago. Iowa State fans have always been well represented there. I mean, obviously Chicago's a Big Ten town and Michigan is a huge fan base, so I would imagine the Wolverines fans will be snapping up quite a few tickets. But the one thing I have always said now in 14 years I've been doing this is never underestimate Iowa State fans' ability to show up to stuff, because they always do.
Travis, did you watch much of Tennessee and Virginia? And when you look at the matchup, where do you see things shaking out for Iowa State?
Didn't have a chance to watch much of it yesterday because we got back on the road to head to Des Moines for a early morning arrival time. But I think like the number one thing that Iowa State is going to have to deal with is what Tennessee does on the boards. I mean, the fact that they get 45% of their misses as offensive rebounds is absurd. And the fact that they were able to do that at that rate in the SEC is incredible. So Iowa State, it's going to start and stop with their ability to rebound the basketball, especially if they're going to be playing a lot of four-guard lineups if Joshua Jefferson either can't go or is limited. If they're able to keep Tennessee to one shot, like Tennessee's pretty marginal offensively in that situation where they don't shoot it great, but when you get to pile up those attempts, you can sacrifice some accuracy for volume there. And I think that'll be the biggest thing for Iowa State. And then are they able to make turnovers and get out and run in transition? And then, can they make a few threes? Because that does really open things up offensively for them.
What's the way to beat Iowa State right now?
Take care of the basketball. I mean, I think everything that they do is so predicated on their ball pressure and not only turning teams over, although that is, number one on the list, but to get teams playing off schedule. Like the big thing with Kentucky yesterday is you could tell they just never knew where that second and third defender was going to come or where that rotation was going to come. Whereas you play teams that are able to better handle that pressure. And I think back to the Texas Tech win at Hilton Coliseum a few weeks ago, they're able to get that skip pass. If they're able to calmly deal with that pressure and move the basketball, you can get good looks against this defense. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible. And if you're able to take care of the ball and you're able to move it via pass against that pressure, Iowa State's superpower gets a little bit diminished there.
Travis, I'm curious, in the state of Iowa, is there any buzz about North Carolina making a run at TJ Otzelberger, and what do you think that might look like if that does happen?
Yeah, I think people are right now mostly preoccupied with the Sweet 16 run.
Good.
And I think like there is a factor of my suspicion and what the reporting that I've seen is if North Carolina does move on, is that there's probably going to be those long shot attempts. Whether that's a Billy Donovan or a Brad Stevens, the guys that everybody goes after every year, and they say no. Like maybe that's different for North Carolina, but I do think. Like once you get through that pretty short list, I would imagine TJ is going to be at the top or near the top of that next tier. So if that happens, I think this will go. The sirens will go off in Ames, especially with what happened just a couple months ago with Matt Campbell leaving for Penn State. This is a fan base a little bit on edge when it comes to that stuff. They always are because they often lose coaches to the quote-unquote bigger and better brands and programs. So I don't think it's top of mind right now for a number of reasons, but I do think it is reasonable to think or assume that if North Carolina has a coaching search and they don't get those top-tier 1A names, that TJ Otzelberger will be a guy that they'll consider and potentially pursue.
Yeah, well said. Curious for your thoughts on Iowa State women's basketball as they're eliminated in the first round of the NCAA tournament. How disappointing is that?
I think it's hugely disappointing. I mean, it's maybe not surprising given the season that they've had, being up and down and being in that 8-9 game where you're in a coin flip. But I think it's when you zoom out, the big picture is really disappointing. Where now you're 3 years into Audie Crooks's career at Iowa State, 3 years into Addie Brown's career at Iowa State and you only have one NCAA tournament victory to show for it. And I think that's frustrating, especially when you started the year ranked in the top 10. And I think like there is an acknowledgement that they haven't probably been able to wring out the level of success, from having a player of Crooks's stature and ability and dominance to get more out of this in 3 years. I think there's definitely frustration and disappointment.
Yeah. Travis, I've got to ask you about this phenomenal article that you wrote about Blake Buchanan. He's been in the NCAA tournament for Virginia and Ohio State, but he was a ball boy as like a 6th grader, took a picture with the Oregon cheerleaders. I'm going to guess he's the giant in this picture standing in the back row, but what did you learn from that piece and that conversation?
Yeah, Blake was very proud of that picture with the Oregon cheerleaders. He was the one who sent it to me, obviously, and he's actually not the giant in that picture. That's his older brother. If you look over to the right, there's another very similar looking young man who would grow up to be taller than his brother.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was an interesting story because Blake's mom was the head coach of the Idaho volleyball program for like 22 years, and Idaho was the host of the Spokane region back in 2016. So Blake got the chance to be a ball boy. He said at that point he didn't really care much for basketball. He was focused on football. So he said that kind of got him thinking a little bit more about basketball. I don't know if it was the cheerleaders or just being around the NCAA tournament, but it left an impression on him for sure.
Yeah, great stuff. Travis Hines, Des Moines Register. Travis, thanks so much for your time, man. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Yep, have a good one, guys.
You too, bud. Thank you. Travis Hines, Des Moines Register, joining us here, break it down. Iowa State reaching the Sweet 16. Still a lot unknown about Josh Jefferson, but could potentially play on Friday. I'd imagine if he plays Friday, then he'd play in the Elite Eight if they got there. But if he doesn't, it's hard to believe that he could be ready to play by the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I mean, I still like Iowa State's chances in this game. I think they match up very well with Tennessee, who's not a great shooting team. Momcilovic is the X factor to me, just his ability to knock down perimeter shots and extend that defense. And then Blake Buchanan, who we just talked about, he's been really active on the glass. And Iowa State is bigger and more physical than I gave them credit for. Seeing them up close and personal at the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, it's like they've got dudes. They've got height. Dominicus Plata, I still think, can be a factor for them coming off the bench on the inside. So I do believe Iowa State is going to be an Elite Eight team with or without Jefferson.
Yeah. I mean, I think correctly so. A lot of people pointed out how different they are without Jefferson and how much playmaking he provides. But the thing that stood out to me about the game against Kentucky, obviously, was don't forget about Tamin Lipsey. Lipsey is from Ames. He's been through a lot in his career. And, this is it. And he played like this is it. I just got through watching an entire Kansas season where it felt like they never really played, for the most part, hey, you got to, it's time to go now.
Right.
You want to see teams at this part of the year playing with desperation. You want to see players playing with that. That's what Lipsey's playing with right now.
Yeah, sense of urgency from
urgency.
The opening tip.
Yes.
A lot of teams get off to these slow starts, and then it takes them a little bit to settle in, and maybe it's nerves and just all the hype in the arena. But Iowa State flipped a switch in that game, and they looked like the aggressor for the final 30 minutes. And if they come out with that same intensity against Tennessee, I can't wait for that coaching matchup too. You get Rick Barnes, who's had a tremendous amount of success. He's in his 70s now. And then TJ Otzelberger, the young up-and-comer, and I cannot wait for that matchup.
Do you think TJ Otzelberger would leave?
I don't know. That is a really difficult job to turn down.
North Carolina.
Because they are going to throw an insane amount of money at him, number one. You think about top 3, top 4 jobs, college basketball, all the prestige. I mean, that to me is an offer that's even a step above a Penn State in football. I mean, that is an Alabama, type offer for basketball. It's big time. It'd be tough to turn down.
Well, and if you're Kansas, and you're moving on from Bill Self, or Bill Self's moving on, it's probably also a call you've got to make, right?
I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, truly, he is what he has done with identifying talent, developing players. And Iowa State used to be like the Portal Kings before the portal was the portal.
Yep.
Fred Hoiberg and even Steve Prohm, and TJ Otzelberger's done a little bit of that, but he's also developed from within. Like Joshua Jefferson was an under-the-radar transfer. He played at St. Mary's and was like a 10-6 type of guy. And Iowa State saw the potential in him, and look at him now.
That's James Westling, Amari Temkin. We'll hear from the coaches in reaction to what we saw this weekend, plus talk a little about the women's side, and got a story from my time in Chicago. It's all on the way next. James, Ari, Big 12 Today, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
In Kansas City is underway. West Virginia basketball. Two teams looking for the first points in this game. Provided by Jordan Harrison. Cook trying to get around Miles. Good feed to McCray. Rolls it in for two. Miles. Defended by Woodley. Miles down the lane. Count it, and one. Harrison for two. Jordan Harrison, as Christy talked about right at the top of the telecast.
She usually will take her defender off the bounce and back them down. But right now, and maybe this is going to be two for him. There you go.
Great feed by Miles as she finds Parker. Harrison. Count it. It's a three. Mountaineers dodge one there. TCU had multiple opportunities.
And right now, with this 9-point lead, West Virginia does not need to be in a hurry. They do not even need to look to shoot the shot until about 5 seconds to go.
Inside of 2 minutes to go, Wheeler on the drive. Big B, good shooter. Can't get it. Rebound, McEllusky.
TCU's got a foul.
They don't get anybody. Here's Shaw all alone for the layup. Cue Country Roads. For the first time in 9 years, West Virginia, Big 12 tournament champions.
Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. We are presented by Modelo.
I'm all tangled up over here.
Tangled up in black today, gray. James Westling, Ari Temkin. Wes Miller has been named the head coach of Charlotte basketball, so congratulations to Wes Miller, who's out at Cincinnati and now will be Charlotte's head basketball coach. James, do you think this is the end of Bill Self? Do you think that he hits the road?
Man, I kind of do. We were talking about this earlier, and just his demeanor all season, I would say. And what else does he have to prove? I'm a big, I think just his, like I said, his demeanor, his body language, even on the sidelines during games, it just feels like a guy that knows this is probably it. And I'm not saying he checked out by any means, but there's been a lot of coaches at his level, and when I say his level, Hall of Fame level, that have retired maybe prematurely because they didn't want to deal with NIL and transfer portal and future number 1 or number 2 NBA draft picks and their minutes and all of those things that and the media. There's just so many layers to coaching. I mean, we see Greg McDermott, who's retiring at the end of this season. That's been official in the last hour of our program. This guy won 365 games in 16 years at Creighton, and is, when you look at his age and his health, probably had another 5 years left, but is ready to step aside and pass the baton to Alan Huss. I love Wes Miller going to Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte's got a really nice NIL basketball budget for their league. They're in the American, which is, a one-bid league right now, but has a bunch of teams that are in the NIT and still some really competitive schools like Wichita State and Tulsa and North Texas. So I love that move for Wes Miller to try to get back to a power conference level.
I think this is probably it for Bill Self. I mean, we've said kind of throughout the year that he's it feels like he's more celebratory than he normally is. I don't think Self's the type of guy to do one final go around like Coach K did. I think, he loves the game, and missing time in 3 consecutive years now due to the health issues, coaching is not good for your heart.
Right.
So I can imagine him sitting down with his family and realizing I've got a lot more lives, years to live, and this is not helping in that. So I think Kansas is going to be looking for a new head basketball coach, and where you go, I mean, I don't know. You could certainly talk to Jacques Vaughn, but I mean, there's plenty of good coaches out there that would love for the opportunity to jump and go to Kansas.
Mm-hmm. And another kind of coaching nugget that took place over the last 5 or 6 days is KU's top assistant, which on paper is Jeremy Case. It's not Jacques Vaughn. Jeremy Case has been on staff for 11 or 12 years, basically since his career as a player ended at Kansas. He does the scout on the opponent. He recently interviewed for the Arizona State opening, which maybe wouldn't win the press conference, but I think would be a tremendous hire for Arizona State. I know their number 1 guy is Randy Bennett, who's considering the job. Reports indicate that he does have interest. He's been at St. Mary's for the last 25 years, but again, the gap between power conference and mid-majors, I think we'll see a lot of these mid-major coaches that have had success and been at their schools for a long time. Maybe this is the time that they make the jump to the power conference level.
Right. You got to strike while the iron's hot, and for many of them, they're not going to have those opportunities because the iron's hot when you win tournament games, and for many of them, they might be really good coaches, but they don't have the talent to overcome the discrepancy there.
And Jeremy Case interviewing for Arizona State, I mean, he's at a point in his career, he could have been a head coach, probably at a mid-major first, but who reached out to who when it comes to that?
Right.
Did Arizona State express interest, or did Jeremy Case see, hey, this is probably it for Bill Self? If a Nate Oates or a Todd Golden or whoever comes in and cleans house, Jeremy Case is going to need a job. So there's a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes stuff that's fascinating to me and how this could all play out.
Yeah. On the women's side, TCU punched their ticket to the Sweet 16. TCU wins their regional. West Virginia against Kentucky tonight, looking to win their regional in advance. And then Oklahoma State and UCLA as well tonight. Oklahoma State trying to do the impossible, knock off the heavily favored 1-seeded UCLA Bruins team. Baylor won their first game before getting doused by Duke in the rematch. Remember, Baylor played Duke in Paris to start the season and won, but that was not the case for Baylor against Duke in the Duke Regional. Iowa State lost in the opening round. Arizona State lost in the play-in game. Who else am I missing?
Texas Tech.
Thank you.
Texas Tech had to play LSU. And Kim Mulkey, with her Baylor ties, wanted to take it out on her former rival. 101-47, the final in that. And then the Syracuse has a really young, up-and-coming head coach. I knew that was a tough draw for Iowa State. And Baylor having to play Duke in a rematch was also a brutal draw. Duke was out for blood, 69-46, the final in that one. Duke had a big lead at the half. Baylor only had 16 points in the first half of that game. So TCU, they got past Washington in overtime, 62-59. We'll see what's on store next for the Horned Frogs.
Yep, and then West Virginia, Kentucky tonight. Oklahoma State, UCLA will be reacting to those games tomorrow. Should be fun. Of course, we're going to start to preview the Sweet 16 matchups for the Big 12, 3 of them. And we will also be making our way through reacting and recapping every season for Big 12 hoops, starting from 16 all the way to 1. So we'll go from Utah all the way to Arizona and figure out how they can improve in the next season, sort of a post-mortem, if you will.
Yeah, Big 12 report card. Who do you want to bring back if you're those fans?
Yeah.
Potential areas in terms of positional needs in the portal. We can break it all down.
Let me ask you this as we kind of close the book on Kansas for now. How much do you put on Bill Self for this season?
I think Bill Self did a tremendous job. With number one, a bunch of new players. Number two, the Darren Peterson saga. I mean, Darren Peterson, the stories are out that he had that full body shutdown where the cramping was so bad he was hospitalized, and Kansas had to make a decision. Do we go public with that now, or do we wait until the end of the year? And they chose to wait until the end of the year. Darren Peterson was not the reason Kansas stumbled down the stretch. I mean, he was doing his part. He was a walking bucket in both tournament games. I felt like, Melvin Council and Trey White and some of those other guys that were supposed to be glue guys, their drop-off shooting the basketball.
I would have loved to see what this team could have done if Peterson left him in December like I asked.
Yeah, if they had shut him down.
Shut him down, go get ready for the draft. We'll move on with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because obviously from a talent perspective and the way this thing ended, it looks crazy to even suggest that, but I would have loved to see it. The other thing for me is, Bill Self recruited Darren Peterson. He had to. You're recruiting his parents too. You're recruiting the whole thing.
Yep.
He had to see this coming, and then of course the end of game situation that ended up ending their season, where you foul. I never get the giving fouls thing. I don't understand what's the advantage to doing it. The disadvantage to me is you're one foul away now from sending a guy out of the foul line when you didn't have to be there. I don't see any of the advantages of doing it. I just think it's one of those things that's always happened in basketball. It's like you got to give the foul when you have it, but I don't get the rationale behind it.
To me, they fouled one too many times. Because if you go into that situation with 5 fouls and there's 6 or 7 seconds left, Elmarco Jackson can just grab the St. John's point guard when he gets to around the foul line and is making his move. But in that situation, he was worried about fouling and putting him at the line, and he gave up a gimme at the basket. So I didn't I didn't mind the strategy the first few fouls, but then I thought they fouled one too many times, and St. John's was inbounding around midcourt at that point in time. I know that the idea is to toss it in the backcourt, but when you've got a point guard that quick, but then also that was that kid's only make of the entire game. So maybe that's a risk, a calculated risk that Bill Self and the KU staff, they were okay with, because he hadn't shown that he can get by Elmarco Jackson all game long. But man, that's the tournament for you.
Yeah. All right, and finally, I was in Chicago this past week. I was helping my parents celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. Yeah. So on their actual wedding anniversary day, my parents, my mom had this whole weekend planned with family. There was going to be a dinner on Friday night, and then my parents are big into the synagogue, so there's going to be synagogue on Saturday and then a huge party Saturday night. Well, on Friday, which was their actual anniversary, my dad fell while they were trying to bring some stuff to the party place that they were having their party. And I basically get a call from my mom 2 hours before this dinner was supposed to start. Hey, we're in the emergency room. Everything's fine. The dinner's still going on. But your dad had a little accident.
Still had the dinner?
I show up at the hospital. My mom had to go back home to get ready for the dinner. I mean, he looked like the Nutty Professor. His lip was so blown up. They were sewing his lip back onto his face, the top of his lip. Yeah, it was really hard to watch. He's all black and blue. He's swollen. Anyways, yeah, my mom still had the dinner. My dad was not able to make it to the dinner. But then Saturday, he was there looking like some Phantom of the Opera character at synagogue, wearing some mask, and then had the party on Saturday night. The show must go on. And I just thought, like, man, what a great way to celebrate 50 years together. Because, like, just showing everything you go through in marriage over the course of 48 hours in 50 years, right? Struggle, adversity, pain, upset, right? I'm sure my mom was upset with my dad for ruining her big weekend. I'm sure my dad was upset at himself for falling, right? Like all of these things.
I don't think he fell on purpose. Did he jump off a balcony?
No, of course not. But I'm sure those feelings existed. I just thought, like, man, what a great example of, like, everything a marriage has to go through. They did it in 48 hours, but have done that over the course of the last 50 years. And a great inspiration, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Going to start calling you the R.E.T.J. Alzelbergers, because that is physicality, toughness, discipline, fighting through adversity at its best.
And always show up.
Refusing to lose.
The
dinner still happened.
The dinner still happened. Of course it did.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. All right, so we're back tomorrow talking about women's basketball, and then, of course, reacting to what happened tonight, and then reacting to the Sweet 16. That's all on the way. Thanks to Taman Turner, our producer with TuneIn. Thanks to Anthony Smith, our producer with Big 12 Studios. Thanks to James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. We're back tomorrow, but for now we're out. Peace.